All right, so now it's streaming and recording. I have my notes off to the side. Okay, so you and me earlier were talking about whether Kirsche was right about things potentially getting worse before they get better. Uh,
Correct. I do remember such a conversation,
yeah.
I think.
So
Yes.
I am of the opinion, not a very popular opinion, but I am of the opinion that, like with the DEI and bridge stuff that she was ahead of the curve on, I do think that she is totally on spot with this too. Um,
I see no reason not to, yeah.
yeah. Okay, so my stream is currently going. And I have, and I outlined a couple of reasons earlier why I think things might get worse before they get better, and it's not going to be necessarily overt. Some of it is definitely going to be covert, but some of it will be overt. So, um, the first line of reasoning that I have is that the progressives see themselves as representing the people by definition. So they are unwilling to accept a potential JD Vance victory as president if he wins. Now, obviously, we're not talking about the moderates. We're talking about the crazy people who celebrated when Charlie Kirk got assassinated, which I
Correct.
which I did a detailed rundown. Hold on. Uh, but let's see, 2 months ago when it happened, responding to Shoe on Head, where I explain the ideological underpinnings and why it is that these people are so ghoulish that they would celebrate the murder of a man in front of his daughter. Um,
Correct.
so, if y'all want to get the lowdown on that particular thing, I would suggest watching "The Sickness Unto Death Drive" is a Gnostic infection. Shoe on Head react. These people are sick. Because I go into quite a bit of detail there, and I don't want to have every video just be me saying the same thing over and over and over again. That would get
Of
really
course.
fucking old really quickly. But
That
yeah. So just so you know, we're talking about the people who are that fucking crazy, and there are a lot more of these people that than you think. Not every one of these people is gonna pick up a gun and start shooting people, obviously. But,
I would
you
hope
know,
not.
there are a lot of people who definitely support the idea that are smart enough to realize maybe they shouldn't necessarily say it, especially after what happened earlier. Again, with the backlash to the Charlie Kirk thing. So,
Correct.
by definition, that particular branch, though, on the left, which is very collective and identitarian, again, they don't see people as individuals in any meaningful respect. Your value as an individual is only insofar as you're useful to the class. And there's an authentic class and an inauthentic class. And the authentic class is what they define as the people. So the progressives are, by their own definitions, by the way that they define things, they are, representative of the will of the people. So anyone who stands outside of that particular will is not part of the people per se. It's not that you're not human, it's just that you're not a part of the body that they define as the people. So,
Correct. Since it's a class based structure,
yeah.
there's only
And
two options. You either are or aren't, is dichotomy.
yeah, and again, like if you're not technically in the one, like let's say it's like with the Marxists with the petty bourgeoisie. The petty bourgeoisie aren't the bourgeoisie, but they side with the bourgeois, so they get folded in automatically, even though they don't fit the otherwise normal requirements to be in the bourgeois. So that's the first reason I think that, and I might be totally wrong, but that's the first reason I think we should be a little bit concerned about this. Is that the true believers are not going to accept the idea that they lose because they have a view of history which is linear. Time marches forward into progression. So anything that works against the natural progress that they see is inevitable is inherently historic and against the will of the people who drive history. So
Correct.
there's that. So my second hypothesis, or not hypothesis, but my second premise of why I think things might go much, much worse, possibly not much, much worse, but that they're going to get worse before they get better, is that the progressives are not accustomed to the right fighting back in any meaningful way. The progressives are used to the right making concessions. But the problem is we've hit a point where the right has realized that making concessions just means that it's long-term victory for the left because the concession only ever really goes one way, which is further and further left. It never actually goes to the center or to the right. So there is that right there. So, and plus, let's be perfectly honest, the thing with Trump derangement syndrome, there are still people who think that Trump stole this election. So again, the whole thing that they will not accept the victory of the right. I mean, we're seeing it in some of these people already, with people saying that, hey, defy the will of the president because his orders are unlawful. It's like that's a dangerous game you're playing there, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, if we weren't about paying fair, it would go east against them so hard. Oh, whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So there's
brain
that.
fart.
But yeah, especially the second election, though, because the first election was already a wound to their pride, but the second election that got him elected is a more severe wound to to the pride of a lot of these people. And to an extent, it's kind of unprecedented. So if they get back into power, they will enact what they believe to be revenge. Uh, and considering that progressives have a history of ignoring laws, implementing identity punishing laws, and torturing the law to get it to say what they want it to say, even if it doesn't, that might not be a pleasant time to be even moderately conservative.
That would be a pretty much the assumption, yes, as far as I'm concerned.
So my third reason that I think that things might get worse before they get better is that a Republican victory makes Republicans complacent because hey, Republicans already won. Now I'm not a big fan of Republicans per se, but I do recognize that the Republicans are better than the Democrats in many respects. So I just at this point just compromise with reality. It's like, hey, if this is the best we got, this is the best we got. But uh,
Correct.
that's the problem, though, is that Republicans often become complacent when they win, and this allows them to be taken by surprise later. Like one thing that I think people forget is that the vast majority of the voter base, for example, is female. This has real consequences with regards to how people vote because men and women vote for different things. Uh, and
But if you point that out, you're sexist.
I mean, I'm not denying the accusation.
I was gonna say,
But
you and me like, wait, what?
another reason that I think things might particularly get worse is that the progressives are actually really good at staging danger and then making themselves to be the solution to that danger by directly causing problems that they then are able to provide the solutions for. Think about, for
Correct.
example, again, how back during the original Trump administration, the left was burning down cities, and then they tried to make it into a regime problem, implicitly suggesting that because it's a regime problem, that if we change the regime, then the problem goes away.
Problem did in fact not go away.
Yeah, the problem did in fact not go away. But there are other examples to that. But and I'll give you an example for the thing that we talked about because one of the videos we're going to react to is actually about the differences between men and women voting. And one example of how the progressives can stage danger and then make themselves the solution. I'm going to actually use an example where there is no danger, and yet they can still create a perception of danger, which is the establishment in some states of equal custody as a standard for child custody cases and
Mhm.
for laws in some states which require paternity tests in order to establish paternity, like legally speaking. Um,
Interesting. I That's new to me.
yeah, they're not in all the states. They are not in all the states. They are in very select few states. But that being said, these ideas do strike some women as like even the ones who it's not really targeted at. The ones that actually behave. Sometimes they just kind of lose their minds when these get brought up because it is portrayed as an almost existential threat. And when you portray something as an existential threat and you get them to treat that thing as an existential threat, it shuts off the rational portion of the human mind. So the superego isn't the one doing the thinking, it's the id, the one that's raw survival instinct. And that can be quite dangerous, again, for obvious reasons, because you can control the voting style. Now, conservatives and progressives actually have different patterns of voting too. Um, so when you put a conservative under duress, politically speaking, they tend to vote for, how would you say? Wait, we've been on for 45 minutes. That doesn't make any sense.
I was gonna say I don't think so.
Hold on, what the fuck is going on here?
I wouldn't worry about it.
Wait, okay. I understand what's going on now. Never mind. You're right. It is nothing to worry about. But where was I? Oh yeah. So when you put pressure economically, security wise, and all that on a conservative, they will vote more towards tradition because tradition is their safety rock. It is the thing that stabilizes the world for them, right? Um,
Yeah.
if you do that for a progressive, they will tend more often towards voting for equity because that is where they find the stability. Is that like we're all in this together type deal instead of hey these were, and the logic is kind of different. Again, the whole progressive ideology is fundamentally eschatological. It's the end goal that ends up defining what is right and what is wrong and how history marches. Whereas more conservative ideologies, it's more along the lines of we have a set of traditions. Even if we don't know what those traditions are for, traditions are established by generations of people who encounter a problem and then they need to come up with a solution to the problem. And that tradition is the solution to that problem. So even if the problem doesn't exist anymore, that tradition did arise as a solution to a real problem that your ancestors experienced. Now, again, not all traditions are made equal. You don't exactly have to be a cultural anthropologist to realize that some traditions are not very good and other traditions are really good. But that all traditions are, for the most part, a response to some issue that needs to be resolved. So, and my final point for why I think we might seriously need to consider that things might get worse before they get better is that the progressives are inordinately good at
What?
framing their own opposition. Huh?
Yes. Whatever the kind you got him, the chocolate is fine. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to do something. I'm trying to do something. Oh, you're fine. Sorry about that.
It's fine. It's fine. Just remember to hit the mute button if something happens.
Oh, I have to mute it on both Discord and oh, son of a bitch.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah. So
I-
the fifth reason why I think that things could get worse before they get better is that progressives are inordinately good at framing their own opposition in the minds of their opposition. Now that might sound like a bit of a that might sound like a bit of a like mouthful, but what that basically means is that the progressives are really good at getting people to believe what their opposition is. And the reason that's dangerous is because if you are completely odious to someone and they want to be nothing like you, so they want to be the conceptual opposite of you, if you control what
Mhm.
they believe to be the conceptual opposite of you, you can control what they believe by just being your odious self. So, for example, obviously Nazis and progressives are not conceptually opposite. Like there are areas where they overlap and agree, and there are areas that they very clearly disagree. Like they're not exactly they're not antithesis to each other. But if you can convince someone that the antithesis of progressivism is Nazism, and I've seen this happen before, then if you can make the progressive movement as odious to their sight, to where they think I want nothing to do with these people are ontologically evil, and so I want nothing to do with them. Then moving to the exact opposite of that, if it's framed by the progressive worldview, then they will move towards the Hitlerian worldview. But if they're actually doing a realistic worldview, if they're actually paying attention to what progressives believe, not just what they say they believe, then the actual conceptual opposite would be a form of conservative libertarianism.
That
But
would
the
make
problem,
sense.
but the problem is that for some reason people will take these people that they already think don't like aren't in connection to reality, and then they will just believe that they are somehow in connection with reality about what their opposite is. Like I shouldn't have to say that, but like if you're confused about how many genders or sexes there are, maybe I don't trust you about what you say is your ideological opposite.
That just seems, again, like a logical extension of yes, no, obviously. It seems like that should be common sense or common wit and common access and thought processing, but for some reason it isn't. I'm not quite sure why.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like the Marxist historians have very much like miscategorized and misrepresented like the basically every ideology in World War II. They've mischaracterized Marxism as somehow not being related at all to Nazism or fascism, even though both of them share a common root ideologically. They mischaracterize oftentimes the Nazi worldview as a Christian worldview when the fucking guy who actually invented Nazism, Rudolf Jung, very clearly positions himself as an Odinist. And it's not exactly up for debate. You can literally read National Socialism by Rudolf Jung, and he all but says that the god of the National Socialists is Odin. He says All Father, and then he distinguishes between the All Father and the god of the desert god of the Jews, who is a god of desolation, according to him. So yeah, it sounds like a Gnostic version of Germanic paganism, because if you look at Nazism from that viewpoint, everything fucking makes sense. All of their motivations suddenly start making sense when you start looking at that. Why wouldn't they say that?
Correct.
Well, because it turns out calling someone a Nazi is a really fucking good cudgel. Like it's a really good weapon because no one wants to be a Nazi, to be perfectly honest. So it's a good weapon to use. And then you look at again the three main powers in the original Axis powers in the European front, and then you see fascism, which is still evil, but not nearly as evil as Marxism or Nazism, because it's not a racial ideology, and it's not a class ideology in the sense of you're going to get your countrymen to murder your countrymen. It is a sort of national origin class system. Are you part of the nation? In fact, actually, the fascists very very specifically believe that God is the collective of all human activity. They also happen to define the state as the collective of all human activity. So yeah, the state is God under fascism. And then what do? They muddy the waters by redefining terms. So fascism no longer refers to a very distinct ideology formulated by Giovanni Gentile under the assumptions of actual idealism, which basically amounts to magic through politics, but they redefine it to be a sort of regeneration based totalitarianism, which is very useful because, again, it allows you to use this word as a cudgel when you've actually robbed it of, what would you say, meaning. When you could have just said, oh, yeah, palingenic totalitarianism. That's like that would be a more accurate description of a lot of worldviews that are classified as fascism, especially when you consider again, like almost everything that is in the fascist like redefinition applies to Marxism as well. The idea of like the
Correct.
rejuvenation of the nation. Well, the thing is that the Marxists believe in a nation, but they just believe in a nation encompassing all of mankind that must be rejuvenated through the revolution that overthrows capitalism and like you know feeds the new world order the blood of the bourgeoisie. So it's like, yeah, nah, Marxism is another palingenic like worldview, and there's nothing intrinsically self-contradictory about a global nation idea. In fact, actually, the whole idea of an ecumenopolis, like a global city, is not all that distinct from the idea of a single global nation. So there's that. Um, uh, so those are the five major points that I think we should seriously consider Kirsche's assertion that things could get worse before they get better. And there's a number of ways that things could get worse before they get better. Like the most obvious way that they could potentially get worse before they get better is that we could see an increase in violence, a la Charlie Kirk and the Irina Zarutska case. So we could see a violent destabilization in that particular order. But we could also see it as just being, for example, the complete subversion of the political system. Like, why are we having why are we having people in the military and in the Senate say, having like making videos and propaganda to say that, hey, don't obey the president's orders, they're illegal, you don't have to obey illegal orders. It's like, well, that's sedition by definition. What the fuck is wrong with
Right.
you people? Like, you may not like the guy, but you know, by law, the the decrees, the executive orders of a president are to be assumed by law to be lawful until otherwise like determined.
Correct.
So again, there is a process to this. So why do you skip the process to go to the most extreme particular overreach, especially when it's generally not true? Judges have been going absolutely over like reaching in authority just to frustrate the president's political agenda. Hold on. I do like this guy, Andrew Branca. I showed you his video earlier where he was talking about that thing we were just talking about, but he
Right.
has done quite a bit of evaluating how judges are acting, and it, let's just say it's pretty easy to show that Trump is not just getting what he wants. If you actually look at how the Supreme Court rules, and I had to talk to someone about this the other day, actually, over Thanksgiving, like Trump is not getting everything he wants. The Supreme Court has, in fact, told him no. One example of that is with that MS-13 member he's been trying to deport to El Salvador, who, for some reason, El Salvador just gave back to us, which I'm going to be perfectly honest. Assume Bukele did this. Yeah, it was Bukele. I assume that the Bukele regime did this for the purposes of saving face for the Trump administration, because I actually think that Trump and Bukele probably get along. But that being said, I honestly think Bukele would have been.
Respawn.
My God, man, that was loud. But yeah, that was not a thing that the Trump administration wanted. He wanted to just say, "Hey, look, this is a foreign national that is committing severe crimes in our nation. We should be able to just kick him the fuck out." And the Supreme Court said, "Nah." So he's not getting everything he wants, and anyone who's saying that he is not paying any fucking attention.
I'm shocked.
Yeah. So one thing that he brought up in one of his videos is let's see, no, that's the president. Here we go. Uh let's see. Here we go. Article 3, Section 1. So Article 3 defines the judicial branch, which, by the way, this is a real quick test of just real quick test of your civics knowledge. Um, what courts are actually established by the Constitution? Feel free to answer.
Trying to. I don't know. I'm trying to think. By the
And to,
Constitution would just be the Supreme Court. No.
yes, you are correct on that. Most people get this wrong. The only court established by the Supreme Court is, I mean, by the not Supreme Court. The only court established by the Constitution is the Supreme Court. That's it. The Supreme Court is the only court that is co-equal to Congress and to the president. Which, by the way, the president also has all executive authority vested in him as per Article 2. And the only reason that he has that function is because the executive branch is the one that needs to be able to actually act in time, not just over time. So, anyway, but Article 3
Yeah.
reads uh, the judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court, and in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. Let's just take that one right there. So when these lower inferior, by the way, that's literally the the name of the courts. When the inferior court judges tell Trump what to do, that automatically destroys the concept of equal branches of government. Because now the president of the United States, the representative of the entire executive branch, is now subject to the lower court, which itself is subject to Congress.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not
It all
really
makes
any way.
sense now.
Yeah, that all that doesn't. Again, it's absolutely fucking ridiculous. Like this is so obvious that, like, if you point this out, someone tries to weasel out of this. I have a hard time believing that they're being genuine here. So let's continue on this because then we get some more interesting details. The judges, both of the supreme and inferior courts, shall hold their offices during good behavior and shall, at stated times, receive for their services a compensation which shall not be diminishing during their continuance in office. Here's the important part right here. During good behavior, a judge can in fact be removed from the bench for acting in a way that is not befitting a judge. Now, what is a way befitting a judge? I mean, presumably it should be defined and informed by what follows in section 2 and 3, right? I mean, this defines what it means to be a supreme, at least for the courts in the United States. But assuming authority over the entire executive branch, I would suggest is probably an example of bad behavior.
Yeah, because they're overreaching.
Yeah, that is not just overreaching. Like you'll always be able to find some judge in Hawaii, for example, that is friendly to the progressive side that will take up the progressive side on some bullshit course, even if it's not in their jurisdiction. It's fucking ridiculous. So you will notice, though, if you look at, for example, the number of impeachments for judges, historically speaking, they suspiciously decrease year by year.
Huh. I wonder
Uh,
what that's all about.
I wonder what that's all about, right? It's like, interesting. The percentage of judges impeached seem to just go down for some reason. I couldn't possibly figure out what the fuck that's about. But yeah, again, the fact that people think that like the courts have somehow absolute power in the United States is fucking ridiculous. Because then all you'd have to do to set up a dictatorship is stack the courts.
You mean the
And
thing they're trying to accuse Trump of doing?
yeah,
Which he hasn't ever?
and to be fair, the Constitution at no point actually gives the judicial branch final authority. And it's pretty obvious that like judges are no different than anyone else. They're human beings. You can find all kinds of examples of court rulings from the Supreme Court that were then overturned by later Supreme Court rulings. And oftentimes, what ends up happening is that the previous court ruling was discovered to have been made in bad reasoning. That's exactly what happened with, for example, the Roe versus Wade decision, where it was like, I mean, looking back at the original court case that established Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court then decided, um, yeah, we don't really understand how they reasoned to this conclusion. Oh, hello, Long. Nice to see you again. Uh, so there's that. I do think that Andrew Branca does suggest that we don't actually need to impeach judges on the good behavior clause, and I'm actually inclined to agree with him. But that being said, I could also see where this potentially opens up a very dangerous precedent of if a judge is just doing something that is potentially correct, but not politically like in vogue, that a politician could then accuse them of doing, of acting outside of good behavior. Because again, as we discussed, we're talking about a group of people that oftentimes tortures text in order to make it say what they want it to say, regardless of what it actually says.
Yeah,
So
the pill pull and whatnot.
Yeah, the cowsery, I think, is the other word for it.
I am unsure of that one. You're the literary man, not me.
But another thing that pops up to my mind is again one suggestion that Attorney Branca gave that I think is a really good one, and I think it's kind of required at this point is hold people actually accountable in sanctuary cities. A real good way to get sanctuary cities and states to stop being sanctuary cities and states is to enforce. And the only reason, again, I know about this is because of like he pointed this out. Uh, 8 U.S. Code Section 1324, bringing and in and harboring certain aliens. Okay, so what does this mean? So it reads any person who, knowing that a person is an alien, brings to or attempts to bring to the United States in any manner whatsoever such person at place other than a designated port of entry or place other than as designated by the commissioner, regardless of whether such alien has received prior authorization to come to enter or reside in the United States, and regardless of any future official action which may be taken with respect to such alien. Two, and yeah, this is legalese, so this is going to be a little knowing or in reckless disregard of the fact that an alien has come to, entered, remains in the United States in violation of law, transports, or moves or attempts to transport or move such alien within the United States by means of transportation or otherwise in furtherance of such violation of law, knowing or in reckless disregard of the fact that an alien has come to, entered, or remains in the United States in violation of law, conceals, harbors, or shields from detection or attempts to conceal, harbor, or shield from detection such alien in any place, including any building or any means of transportation, encourages or induces an alien to come to, enter, or reside in the United States knowingly or in reckless disregard of the fact that such coming to, entry, or residence is or will be in violation of law, or engages in any conspiracy to commit any of the preceding acts, or aids or abets the commission of any of the preceding acts, shall be punished as provided in subparagraph B. That covers a lot of territory, first of all.
Yeah, that's actually pretty laid out.
Right? Like, I mean, just thinking about it right now, does this should this not cover? I'm not a legal expert, but just like, and again, I know of at least one lawyer who agrees with me on this subject. But law is never a settled thing. You always have to renegotiate with the law for some reason instead of establishing what it precisely means. But I hate that about this shit. But that being said, shouldn't that cover sanctuary cities, like sanctuary politicians, mayors, and
I was just does
mayors
that just
and
cover the entire state of California?
right, yeah, like mayors and senators and governors, who are actively aiding and abetting again illegal entry into the country. What about charities that have been recently found to be smuggling people across the border?
Hmm.
I
Mhm.
mean, I don't see why this exempts anyone in charities from doing that. What about companies?
Look at all those turkey plants. Mhm. It's 'cause Kirsche just talked about that earlier.
I actually haven't seen that episode. I'm gonna have to watch that. But
Oh, it was just literally it was literally just her live stream from, like, an hour earlier, I was watching it.
oh, fair enough.
There was a case that just got brought up where, an illegal migrant had, basically bought someone's identity for about $250 from another worker at the turkey plant, the processing plant, and he has been doing this for quite a while. He'll get caught because he basically was getting DUIs and stuff on this person's, and this guy got screwed over because of it, for obvious reasons. So, it was, really interesting when they mentioned the price of how much he bought the identities for. I'm like, "Wow, your life is your entire existence is worth $250, folks. Just remember that."
Hold on, we gotta chat. If illegal immigrants could vote, things would become normal. I mean, that is the exact problem. If illegal immigrants could vote, then a lot of things that would make the United States into most of these third world countries that they came from would be the norms in the United States. We would be quickly overrun by people who honestly just couldn't make their own country work. And that's not to disparage any of these any of these other peoples. Like, my personal preference would be the people of Mexico actually get a hold of their country and overthrow the cartels and actually establish what the Cristeros wanted, for example, which was a stable, functioning society which was undergirded by Catholic, principles. It's the same thing that I want, for example, with Japan. Like, I want Japan to be able to keep its self sovereignty and stay a great nation. Like, I want Japan and Mexico to be great again, if you will. Like, I'm actually not all that opposed to Japan reinstating its military. Um, but that's because I also recognize that Japan today is not the Japan of back when.
Okay.
Again, same thing with like basically any other country. I would prefer that we all do as best as we can. Obviously, that's not going to happen because there are more ways to do something wrong than to do something right. But
Okay.
we can pay attention to each other and see what is actually worked across the board and emulate that.
Hmm. That would require not being lazy.
But like for
That
example,
would
you
require.
import a bunch of Somalis, and all you're going to get is a little Somalia that honestly might not be all that stable. It's just that thing. Like, not everyone is the same within any particular group. Just this
How
is
dare you
also
use that fake name?
hold on. This actually brings up a good point where maybe there should be some moderation when it comes to like importing like people as like new citizens. Because if we continually take only the best from other countries, then we deprive those countries of their best. Now,
I feel like
I'm not entirely sure how to solve that problem, but I could see that being a problem that could potentially become an issue, especially in some nations like the Middle East. We were talking again earlier about how people are finally starting to notice. You and me have known about this for a while, but how people are finally starting to notice or just actively talk about the fact that like a lot the inbreeding problem in certain communities is actually quite absurd, and this doesn't negate their human dignity. Like, it doesn't matter how a child comes into the world, they're still human, they still have human dignity. But at the same time, maybe you don't promote particular practices that show to decrease the average population of the average intelligence of your population. You know,
correct, but I imagine part of this also too, like the part the how do I say this? The part of the resolution to this problem would be almost verbatim to an extreme at least. What people have already been saying is just stop importing foreign aid so much. Or like specifically foreign workers and foreign like the brain drain, as everyone likes to call it. You just we how as people pointed out, I think a few people talk about it, these aren't jobs that Americans don't want. A lot of these jobs that they're taking. These are actually like jobs people would do.
oh yeah, no,
Even the farm work.
I'm aware of
So it's
the
like
yeah, I'm aware of the secret Indian job application sites. I'm aware of them.
no, I know, but like, there's even other examples. Like, even on the farming, like, right, half the reason they take the migrant workers is just because they're cheaper.
Yeah,
Because, and then of course they can abuse certain things. And it's like, it's not just India; it's in general. Like,
oh
like
yeah,
a
no,
lot of
it's
these
like
jobs could be like
yeah, it's Central and South
automated too to solve
America.
this problem.
It's yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's almost like our obsession with anti-automation is making this worse for us, which is really funny,
I,
given what just happened with all the harbor workers on the east and west coast doing that unionized thing. And when we talked about that before, how big their paychecks were, and we're like, "What the hell?"
well, I mean, to be fair, you already know what my opinion on things like AI are. I'm very much a supporter of AI as a assistant to human productivity. Like, I don't think the
I'm
AI
always,
will
yeah,
ever like actually replace human beings. That's just because I do think that there are fundamental limitations on things like LLMs and the other AI models, and I think depending on how exactly the AI is structured will determine the upper limitation to it. But just like the brain configuration has an upper theoretic limit, so does any AI system you're going to come up with. And I think that eventually what we're going to find is that these systems can be complementary if, you know, I think these systems
No,
can
yeah,
be complementary.
no, it only makes sense that these machines become learning because, as Eric July pointed out, when these automations happen, new jobs happen to support the automation. So it's not like it's fundamentally not a replacement. It is always complementary, as far as I can tell. Even with the farm work, right?
Yeah,
They just make tasks easier. But like, yes, you have less people, but those people can then do other work, etc. As has always been historically consistent. There is never a replacement, only a complement. And
yeah.
the
I
fact
mean,
that people are so against automation kind of points out that this is just the reason, like me, you and me joke they're scared of AI is, yeah, you made fun of the people who didn't learn to code. Now they didn't learn to do this. You know, all the jocks and stuff, they're getting replaced by machines. But now the artists are getting replaced by machines. Of course they're upset. They thought they were irreplaceable. Who
yeah.
next? The
Now,
textile workers were replaceable. Why aren't you, nerd?
again, you know what my response to that is like, hey, look, man, yeah, sure, learn to draw. I do think you should learn how to draw, but maybe you should also learn how to prompt. Like, maybe the two
Correct.
are not mutually exclusive. And again,
Yeah.
the fact that like AI artists can struggle to figure out how the hell specific AI artists do certain things might indicate that it's hold on. That was my computer. But again, the fact that like certain AI artists can produce substantially better product than others, and that even some of them that they can struggle to figure out how the hell the higher end AI artists are actually producing what they do, might indicate that yeah, it's not just completely automated. There actually does require to be a certain amount of skill. And to be perfectly honest, I don't exactly see what the difference is between an AI, like someone prompting an AI, and a wizard in like a fantasy novel going abracadabra. Literally, I create with my hands and then making form out of formless chaos. Because when you actually understand how the
Well,
diffusion model works, it is literally making form out of formless chaos, and it's doing so by prompting of word. And again, magic often uses you know, if you had a wizard in front of you and they literally prompted the world around them to create an image like a statue of an anime girl, I think we'd all be fucking impressed. But just because it's a computer, it's somehow not impressive at all, even though it may take just as much learning to figure out how to do it correctly.
that's my point. Is like I was gonna say, it's like I don't think people understand how all these drawing programs used to be seen versus now. So it's like, what's the difference between the AI doing this versus you using like digital tools versus physical tools? We had the same argument 20, 30 years ago
I mean, you had the
of
argument
that.
for like
No, digital.
photography and painters too.
That's what I'm saying though. But like, there's always been like this resistance, and the people who embrace the new technology properly, not just embrace it, but embrace it properly, tend to survive and come out on top. Same thing with the .com bubble. People who realize that, and again, that's why Amazon came out on top because it was like using it to sell his bookstore stuff back then when he was just a bookstore runner.
Mhm.
And that's why the people who just use .com as a way to get traffic rather than actually promote a business failed. If you use the tool properly in a way that makes sense, yeah, you're going to profit. It's going to happen. You can't stop the advancement of technology.
Yeah, and I would argue you probably, unless it's like a severe ethical problem, like for example, a human brain organoids, which I have a lot of problems with. You
Oh,
probably
correct.
shouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Correct.
let's
I
not.
think there's
Yeah,
also that side.
like I'm not a
Oops, my bad.
yeah, I'm not a transhumanist. I'm not a progressivist. I am what you would call. I believe I'm a realist. So like I'm totally on board with new technologies, and I'm aware that new technologies have costs on the subject. Like again, just test the memory of, for example, people who live in a literate society versus people who live in an illiterate society, and you'll find out that the people who never developed writing have impressive memories, like fucking actually astonishing good memory. And the reason why is
Oh yeah,
because
we
they don't have anything to like buffer them
remind them.
for memory. Yeah. But anyway, back
No,
to
so
the.
saying we're talking about that with the like,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry. Keep going.
No, you're good. No, no.
Okay. Yeah, we kind of got sidetracked on that, but it was a fun sidetrack.
It
Um,
happens.
yeah. But anyway, so back to the thing. So we're talking about like the illegal aliens, and again, let's go to now that we've established what's been covered. Let's go to the fact that where was it? Shall be punished as provided in subparagraph B. Okay, so a person who violates subparagraph A, oh, that's a subparagraph, right? shall for each alien in respect to whom such violation occurs, in the case of a violation of subparagraph A1 or 5.1, why did they? Okay, anyway. Or in the case of a violation of subparagraph A2, 3, or 4, in which the offense was done for the purpose of commercial advantage or private financial gain, be fined under Title 18, imprisoned not more than 10 years or both. I think we might need to. I think we
Up that
might need
number.
to. Yeah, no, not up the number, but I think we might actually need to start enacting this one. Because when's the last time you heard this actually happen?
Uh, Never. Not that
Exactly.
I'm aware of.
In case of a violation of subparagraph A2, 3, 4, or 5, subsect 2, be fined under Title 18 or imprisoned not more than 5 years or both. Again, I don't think I've ever heard of this either. I think maybe this should be enacted. It's right there. In the case of a violation of subparagraph A1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, during in during and in relation to which the person causes serious bodily injury as defined in section 1365 of title 18 to or places in jeopardy the life of any person, be fined under title 18, imprisoned not more than 20 years or both.
Hmm. I think there's a mysterious trucker who that falls under.
Well, my first thought went to Irina Zarutska.
Oh, that one too. Yeah, I was gonna actually fair
Yeah,
enough.
because what
Fair. I
wasn't
was thinking of the Indian trucker.
because wasn't she? Well, the Indian trucker thing is fucking tragic because it turns out the Indian trucker was an illegal immigrant, but the family he killed with that illegal U-turn were legal immigrants.
No, that's my point. Yeah, that's just like
It's like it would be comedic if it wasn't fucking tragic. To be perfectly honest, it's like an like if it wasn't real, it would be funny, but it is real. So it's like I laugh
Eh,
not because it's funny, I laugh because it's tragic, because it's
it's
fucking
depressing.
horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like it's that whole thing. If I didn't laugh, I'd cry type thing, right? Um, let's see. But yeah, it's and again, the whole thing is like yes, places in jeopardy the life of any person or causes severe bodily injury. I think we need to enact this passage more often, to be perfectly honest.
I think we
And
need to enact all this way more often.
yeah, in case of a violation of subparagraph A2, A1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, resulting in the death of any person, be punished by death or imprisoned for any term of years or for life, fined under Title 18 or both. This is the one I think would get really a kick in the fucking pants, to be perfectly honest. Like,
Yeah, we'd have a lot of dead politicians, wouldn't we?
well, maybe. But that being said, I really do need to fix your avatar now that I see how it's shrinking. And it's that Legends of Evantris
Yeah.
fucking. It's that Legends of Evantris meme. You only got two spells: enlarge, reduce. Sorry, but
No, you're
but you
you're
wouldn't.
not wrong.
But you wouldn't have to like enact this on very many people. The first person you put in life prison for again like aiding and abetting this shit, that's gonna send a message. God forbid someone
Yeah.
actually gets capital punishment for this. And I can already see people raising constitutional problems with this, but it's like I don't really understand how this would violate the Constitution. Like there's nothing that comes to mind in the Constitution that seems to prevent this from happening. To be perfectly honest, it's not like this is a cruel or unusual punishment. It's not like
Yeah.
this. It's not like this is completely arbitrary. This is literally you being an accessory to a crime that results in someone's death. So,
Yeah. No.
so
Yeah. No.
I do think that this would very much stem the tide of charities, businesses, and what would you call state governments and city governments flooding the United States with illegal immigration. Because again, it's easy to put your money where your mouth is when it's literal money, if you have money to spare, right? But
Yeah,
when you
money's
start,
replaceable.
yeah,
Your
when you
life isn't.
start, yeah, I was about to say, when you start like actually talking about doing time, or at possibly your entire life on the line, a lot more people are going to do the economic calculation and realize the juice is not worth the squeeze.
I believe we need to bring back the bloody code.
But I'm not going that far yet. But you've been watching Sargon,
I
haven't you?
mean, no, I just know what I'm talking about at this point. I think maybe this is the start of our bloody code. This is just the immigration bloody code. I don't know.
Oh God, I
It's
hope
just
not.
I'm just saying, man.
Yeah, I would prefer peaceable mass deportations than a bloody code. But
No,
but
no, 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 not for them. You deport them. I'm saying for the people who, abet them and all that. All these charities and politicians and
fair enough. Yeah, it
yeah.
was it was definitely interesting to see Kirsche figure out that like a lot of these charities are allegedly Catholic. Like, yeah, interesting that like a Catholic charity, when the Catholic Church is very clear that nations have a right to define their borders and their immigration policies, would be aiding and abetting the subversion of a nation's immigration policies.
I was gonna say, I think it was. We talked about that. I think it was quite a few people that seem to understand that. Where it's like the whole Superman morality thing. Where it's like, no, I think this character, just like the church, respects the local laws of the country that he is currently residing in.
Yeah, I mean,
I
part
think
of that
people
is
try
yeah,
to stretch that and abuse it.
part of that is just respecting the people around you. Like, it really is that simple. Um, but again, the whole idea that you respect the people around you is not a universal thing. All right.
Correct.
So this is the part I really wanted to get to. Uh, no, this is the part I really wanted to get to. Uh, because that's really the only part of this that actually really matters about any of this stuff, to be perfectly honest. The rest of this is kind of superfluous to anyone really giving a damn if you actually start enacting these punishments, which I think that they should. I do think that sanctuary city mayors and like sanctuary state governors and businessmen who are knowingly hiring illegals, or charities that are knowingly spiriting people away. I think they actually should be held to the bringing and harboring in certain aliens code.
Yeah.
I think that that's entirely fair, and this would stop a
I
lot of the
don't.
problems that we're having.
I'd stop a majority of them. I don't see why not. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. We did talk about watching a video for our React content. Uh, I've already seen that. So I know you haven't seen it yet, but I did see someone had already reacted to this. So hopefully, I don't get hit with a strike. I mean, if it does flag, then I can just fucking edit it out of the video, I guess. But uh,
Have fun with that one.
anyway, uh, okay. So I guess we'll just play.
Right now. I see evidence of this cultural man hating attitude daily. I used to participate in this culture. I was angry and resentful toward men for most of my late teens and into my early 20s. In both my undergraduate and my graduate education, I was taught to view all issues of power and all issues of social justice only through the lens of the patriarchy. I learned over and over that men are the oppressors and everyone else is the oppressed. Although I know so many good men and have always had good men in my life, I viewed them as exceptions to the rule. As I understood it,
I don't know who did the subtitling for this video, but they need to be fired.
Yeah, I know.
all men
Also, like, I guess she's just really young. Then I was gonna say because I'm like, me that she can't be that much younger than us, can she?
I have
It's
no
such a
idea.
vast difference.
But
Like,
again, right there was the whole again Gnostic Marxist class conflict theory. The two groups
yeah,
that can't really be bridged, together.
Men had the socially sanctioned option to treat women badly because of the society that they inherited, but I believed that some of them had made the personal choice to treat the women in their life well despite this. As I understood it, the good men in my life were working against the system that they inherited, but they still ultimately benefited from the system that oppressed so many, myself included. Then I became a therapist, and two things started to happen. First, I started seeing how negatively people were perceiving men, just in general. And second, I saw how the constant negative messaging was impacting the mental health of individual men. These
I will say that I don't exactly suggest therapy for most people because
Yeah, I
if
was
you
gonna
can
say.
if you can fix your own problems on your own, then good, do that. But if you can fix your own problems with recourse to family or friends, I mean, not everyone can, but in those cases, do that. It'll save you money, and it'll get the job done faster and more effectively. If you actually need a therapist, then sure, go to a therapist, but make sure your therapist is actually competent and not importing their own baggage into the therapy room and projecting it onto you, which happens more often than people think.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the risk of that. It's like, given how many medical and scholarly few fields have been hijacked by the Marxists.
Yeah, you know what? At some point we should talk about Lysenkoism. Not today though, because I'd have to get some notes.
I was gonna say that's a rabbit hole, if we can even call it that. That's a tremor,
Yeah,
fissure, if you
I
will.
I would have to start. I would have to gather some notes for that because there's a lot of issues with Lysenkoism. And one area that people don't really ascribe to Lysenkoism, I'm just going to say this now, is physics. Because yeah, technically physics doesn't really support or like for or against the left or right ideologies either way. But it starts looking a bit Lysenkoist when, for example, the reason why people keep investing money in theories of everything that never go anywhere, and investing in projects that just don't provide any kind of answer, yes or no, either way, which happens quite a bit in physics, might be because they're ideologically driven by the beauty of their own mathematical formalism, which again is not necessarily political, but it is an ideological motivation that takes precedent over actual empirical study. And Sabina Hassenfelder has talked about this, obviously, but no one has framed it through the lens of, again, an ideological motivation, which it fundamentally is. It's basically just, I wouldn't call it a Platonism, but it does remind me a bit of Platonism, where again the ultimate reality is only fundamentally mathematical, and that the physical reality is an extrapolation of that mathematical reality.
These observations led to
Hell,
me realizing that the way I had been taught to view issues of social justice and issues of gender are very problematic. I found that this modern framework for understanding social justice issues has led to a cultural interpretation of beliefs about gender that are, at best, indifferent to, and at worst, in favor of male suffering.
Yeah, again, I don't know that she's going to bring this up. Oh, I didn't realize this was 30 minutes. We're going to get a decent reaction out of this one.
I was gonna
um,
say we're gonna be here a minute. Help.
but yeah, remember when back when I told you that like social justice, it uses the language of goodness when actually it is a justification for vice,
Yes,
and
this
and
is
it,
quite a
and
while ago.
and that justice is defined if you actually analyze social justice for what it is versus what it says. Social justice is actually we get what we want, not the scales are equalized, not reality is like established, which would be other for ideas of justice, but rather we get what we want, and that is by tautological definition justice.
Yeah, no, it always came off to me as a power slash domination thing, not an actual equality or equity or justice thing. Just like the more and more, even before like we encountered, it always came off to me like it came off like a bloodlust almost. It couldn't be satiated,
Yeah, like a like an
and
en- like a hateful envy.
yeah, 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 that seems about right to describe it. Hateful envy
Yeah, because again, like
seems.
how else could you describe you have what I want, what I can't have, and also I want what's worse for you.
That makes a lot of sense. No. Like, given like Marx himself was a very envious and just hateful man too. Like when you
Uh,
actually dig
uh
into him and read.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
real piece of
yeah.
fucking
No, that
work.
just makes no, 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 for sure. Like you and I have been over this, but it's just like it makes logical, extensive sense in that regard. That is just the natural evolution of any ideology that embraces Marxism, even remotely. It just becomes about hateful envy.
Well,
Because that's kind of what we're
yeah.
seeing too in the counter movement from like the manosphere and stuff, where it's like almost like revenge porn at this point.
Well, the thing with the manosphere is it depends on because the manosphere isn't very descriptive. There's a lot of things under the term manosphere. For example, MGTOW is not really a hateful movement because of one thing. There's no real formal definition of what the fuck MGTOW actually believes. So
Oh, that's fair.
you can have people who are very well adjusted and just want to opt out of marriage because they don't think it's safe, but don't have anything against women per se, and that would be still MGTOW. But you can also have someone who has an Andrew Tate style view of women, but instead of wanting to get with women, he wants to stay the fuck away from them because he hates them. And that would also be part of MGTOW. So I actually, funny enough, um, so you know how I have like how I devised my own power system with minimal metaphysical assumptions, right?
Correct.
Okay, so I also went and I analyzed what would be empirically knowable of that power system through various lenses. And this included things like feminist phenomenology, which I don't particularly care about, but I ran it by someone. They said it was accurate. Uh, and I was like, if I'm going to do these feminist worldviews, I might as well do MGTOW. And then I realized, well, there is no real metaphysics of MGTOW, so I had to invent a metaphysics of MGTOW in order to put it in the document.
That that I guess I was thinking of more like the general assumptions people have about
Yeah.
that stuff,
If you wanted a
and that's the
real
problem.
if you wanted a real justification for MGTOW, to be perfectly honest, on a metaphysical level, so I'm doing a lot of legwork for a lot of people who wouldn't care about it, by the way. Um, you would have to lineage the Schopenhauer Nietzsche existentialist branch of philosophy, which is more about living authentically.
No, that makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, you could
yeah.
also, I guess, in theory, do the Andrew Tate thing and just gender invert feminism to where men are the oppressed class instead of females. I mean, women, and then where women see themselves as the oppressed class in feminism. But it's basic. But like again, there's no real word for the Andrew Tate ideology, which is basically just a dialectically inverted feminism. I would suggest masculinism, but apparently that's a word already in use for something else. So I'm not fucking sure. Maybe radical
Haterism?
masculine, huh?
Haterism?
I have
I don't
maybe,
know.
but yeah. So that's just going to be a problem for a while, I guess, because since it's not all that acceptable or polite, to talk about this in polite conversation, you don't really get
Which is
into the
annoying.
weeds. Yeah, you don't really get to the weeds of what these people actually believe. Like again, in the manosphere, you have the black pill and you have the red pill. There's a lot of difference between the two. So again, this isn't really the only thing that really the manosphere shares in common is a solidarity of male suffering at the hands of women. That's about it. And even then, it's not even always bitter. Some of these people are actually fairly well put together. They're just like, yeah, no, I've been burned and I'm just not going to participate anymore. That's not necessarily a bitter outlook.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. You can be embittered by life, but not also be outwardly bitter, and
Yeah.
etc. So, no, yeah,
Yeah. Again, but you are right to suggest that like a lot of the manosphere is Marxian in its class conflict theory. They won't outwardly structure it this way, but some of these people do actually act like radical feminists in that they see things in a class gender binary that has to be in some way either inverted or abolished in some way. So,
yeah.
but
The false
yeah,
dichotomy and etc. Too. Yeah,
yeah, but yeah, those class conflict ideas where you have like an oppressor class and an oppressed class, and that this is intrinsic to human nature as we exist under patriarchy or capitalism or queer heteronormative or not queer or heteronormativity or the gynocentric worldview, which the manosphere thought it is all structurally identical. It's just we're switching around which person is the bad guy based on our own personal concerns. Critical race theory has it be again whiteness as oppressor, and then BIPOC as oppressed. It's basically race Marxism, as it's been called, I think, fairly accurately. So, yeah. But I do think, again, she did mention that she had to learn about everything through the lens of gender
You're breaking
conflict.
up.
Can you hear me?
Your mic's breaking up.
Oh, fair enough. Okay, yeah, my VPN is off, so I don't know what's going on here. Is it better now?
uh, no. At least not on my end from Discord.
Ah, scheiße. Oh, hold on.
I don't know.
Let me try something.
Yeah, you're cutting in and out, and then having a bit of echo slash phasing. It sounds like.
Oh, god damn it. All right, let's turn this all the way down to 80, see if that kills the echo. Hopefully that kills the echo.
You know, you can put a filter on for OBS. So actually, if we're going through Discord, I don't know how much that affects it.
Yeah, I have. Discord's been a pain in my ass. It has screwed over my microphone before, and I'm not entirely sure why. But I assume you can hear me still.
Yes, right now I can hear you. You're much clearer now.
Okay, yeah, I have no fucking clue. But all right, so I guess we'll let her talk. I mean, we've talked a lot for considering we haven't even hit the 2 minute mark.
Hi, I'm Gabriella. I'm a licensed trauma and attachment therapist. And I realized that we are utterly failing our boys and men in this country. And I'm trying to explore this topic more and figure out what we need to do about it. So, after seeing the magnitude of male suffering in my clinical practice, I realized that I actually had no framework for understanding what was happening with boys and men.
Okay. Again, she mentioned the class conflict thing. I'm going to posit that that is not by accident. I'm going to posit the fact she has no framework for had no framework for understanding what is happening with men and boys is by design, not accidental, and that it's motivated by that feminist class conflict theory.
Yeah.
And more
No, I'd have to agree.
I realized that whatever's happening to boys and men is not being acknowledged in the way that it needs to be. My first task was to observe the lived experience of boys and men in our society. So I started observing the culture, and the first thing that I noticed was how acceptable it is to speak abusively about men in the mainstream media. This video is of one instance I noticed between Jordan Peterson and Piers Morgan. I posted that a few months ago, and a few people asked me if I'd seen the Red Pill documentary.
Yeah, to be fair, that is a good documentary. It
It's interesting, yeah, I think.
Yeah, much of what I ended up talking about, I don't think is actually in the documentary about like the nitty gritty details between like again red pill, black pill, MGTOW versus pickup artist culture versus like radical masculinism. Because those are all lumped together into the same sphere when honestly they should be treated as quite different.
No, I agree. Yeah.
Heard of it, but I hadn't seen it. I still had a bad taste in my mouth for men's rights, and to be honest, I was bummed that people kept asking me to watch a documentary about men's rights. I knew that there was something going on with men. I'd seen it directly in my clinical practice, and I've seen it culturally, but I didn't think that it was an issue of rights. I think to myself and to most people who care about women's rights, hearing men talk about fighting for men's rights, it seems a little bit like Augustus Gloop from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, who has an unlimited supply of chocolate, but is choosing to take a bite out of the single chocolate bar that Charlie gets every year on his birthday.
Okay, so again, a good way to understand this, and this doesn't really need to be explained like excessively, but if you again remember the idea that patriarchy creates this hyper reality, so this false reality estranging women and men from themselves and who they are in reality, then yeah, the idea of men's rights in a world that is literally created by male power structures would seem absurd because it is men in this case as a class actually standing in the way of the obliteration of patriarchy. So it actually makes sense again if she was given a feminist framework from working for you know as a therapist that this wouldn't have crossed her mind about men's rights, that the idea that
Yeah.
men are somehow like being deprived of their rights in certain areas just sounds farcical if you genuinely believe that kind of worldview.
Yeah, no, if you're raised in the vacuum that believes that men make the rules, why would the men make the rules against themselves? That just can't happen.
Yeah.
It feels gluttonous, out of touch, and honestly a little bit offensive. As a precursor to what I'm about to say next, I want this channel to be an actual record of my thoughts, so I'm not going to sugarcoat to save face. I assumed that this documentary was going to be a bunch of men who were mad about feminism and wanted to make the case that men are more oppressed than women. I did not know where this documentary was going to take me in terms of content, but I have such a negative connotation of the red pill world and of the manosphere. I assumed I was going to be frustrated or offended by the messaging of this documentary. I assumed that this pro-men rhetoric would be anti-woman.
Again, oppositional class conflict theory.
Because
Yep.
that's how I've been taught
Now
to
that
view
You were saying?
no, I was just agreeing.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
all men's rights advocacy. So I watched this documentary probably like 10 times just so I could fully absorb it. And
Uh, Props to her, to be perfectly honest,
I was gonna
for doing.
say, yeah, she's a better sponge than me. Oh my goodness, 10 times.
Have you ever actually seen the Red Pill movie?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't remember.
You know what? That would actually make a really good, that would make a really good video. Just like your thoughts on the Red Pill video after having watched it. Maybe we'll schedule it in it for something.
the
That
first
wouldn't be
few
a bad
times I
idea.
watched it with that defensive shell that humans tend to have when our identity is being challenged. And before I did the work that culminated in the creation of this video, I identified really strongly with the feminist line of thinking. So it was very cognitively and ideologically disorienting to hear a men's rights activist speak about men's rights and wholeheartedly agree with everything that he was saying. I still don't know if I'm allowed to swear on YouTube, so I'll bleep it out, but it was a bit of a mind. It was really shocking to me that I hadn't heard of any of these points brought up in the documentary ever. And I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, a master's degree in social work, and I'm someone who's very well versed in social justice issues.
Well, maybe social justice wasn't like predisposed to a Marxist feminist ideology as its roots.
No, but I mean, yeah, fair enough. Like you are correct about that. We did mention that earlier. But let this sink in. She has a bachelor's degree in psychology. This never came up.
That's what I'm saying. It's like that just sounds like it's
She,
interesting.
she has a master's degree in social work.
And this never came up.
Yeah, again, this is not to say that she didn't do her job. To be perfectly honest, she probably did her job to the best of her ability that she was aware of.
It
Like,
means the teachers
yeah,
didn't, and the system failed her.
yeah. I mean, to be fair, everyone has their blind spots. There's areas that I just don't know about, but other people do, and there's areas that I know very well that most other people don't know very well. Human beings are complementary in how they learn. We're not meant to know everything. But again, you need someone to be able to cover your blind spots, and if no one is covering your blind spots, you can't be able to, like, you can't respond to anything in it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Though it's like it's the same thing I say. If you're raised in the vacuum, well, he knows the vacuum. It's the same equivalent where it's like, yeah, that's valid. You can't blame them for not knowing something they couldn't have ever been exposed to. But that means whoever was, this seems like something that should have been exposed to in the field she was studying, and the fact that it wasn't is really uh, telling.
Yeah. And again, I don't think that these were omitted for innocent reasons. I think that even if her teachers did not omit this on purpose, I think that the structure, well, not structure, but the organization of how these things are taught, generally speaking, was, if you will, informed in such a way that these would not be brought up. That's just my guess.
No. I fully heartedly agree with that at this point. I think that's very obvious.
The most meaningful information that I learned from this documentary was information about myself. Before I watched this documentary and then continued to explore men's rights issues extensively for the next 2 months, I had no idea how ignorant I was about men's issues. I know so much about feminism and I know so much about women's issues, and that's a start, but that's not even half of the equation. So I spent the last 2 months studying men's issues and reading and learning and watching anything that I could get my hands on. I literally felt like a movie character who was capturing as many ideas as they could and tying them together and connecting them with string. And I literally felt like that's what I was doing, because that literally is what I was doing. I used the biopsychosocial spiritual
vey.
model of assessment to categorize all of the issues that men face in all of these different domains.
It is literally that meme from The Office,
It's also literally the question.
right?
From Justice League Unlimited.
It's like, these people have been complaining about not getting their mail for months. That I haven't seen much of The Office, but I have seen that scene. I'm like, okay, I get why that was a meme.
So this wall is my map. I've put down all of the keywords and potential areas that I need to explore in order to get a good understanding of all these different issues. So shout out to the 10 or so people that recommended that I watch this documentary, because I think you've determined what my life is going to look like for the next couple of years. Because what I've found in my research is that our absolute failure to acknowledge and work toward correcting the issues facing boys and men is so much worse than I anticipated. And to be clear, that doesn't mean that girls and women have it good or even have it better. Boys and men and girls and women have issues that they face that are specific to their sex class, and both are worthy of our time.
Did you catch that?
Yep, she said it. She said
Yeah.
the word.
It's
She said it.
yeah, it's still there. It's still there. But she has at least recognized that the framework itself is false, even if she's still using the language.
Time and attention.
But yeah, when people like say that I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about when like about sex class, about the idea of a sex class, right fucking there, example of it being used.
Don't care as much about girls and women's issues as I did before I got into this. So, oh my goodness, please don't fall into the trap of comparing suffering, because it doesn't work, it hasn't worked, and it's not going to get us anywhere.
Also, it's pretty vain to compare suffering like that.
Yeah, no, that.
Like,
It's like I didn't realize this was a dick measuring contest for suffering. That's
yeah,
kind of
it's like,
weird.
what is the purpose of comparing suffering in this case, unless you believe that somehow the dignity of your suffering has been impugned by someone else's suffering? It is literally just vanity.
Yeah, like it also fails. It's literally the empathy versus sympathy thing we talked about too before, almost at that point where it's like if our suffering is different, then it really can't like be compared. So we have to. It takes a lack of sympathy to go off on like that.
Yeah, I mean, like to your point, like I would rather if I had to choose between someone with empathy and someone with sympathy, it really would be contingent on what in God's name is going on. Like, I would prefer someone who, let's say, has no. I would prefer a psychopath with sympathy to operate on me than someone who's too overly empathetic. To be perfectly honest, and that
Yeah, in those extreme cases, yeah.
yeah, but no, but that should alone prove that sympathy is not a vice. Like sympathy is actually a good thing. Because the thing with empathy is you have to, in a sense, enter into someone else's space, make it about yourself by definition. When sympathy just allows, like, hey, look, I will suffer with
That's
you.
rough, buddy.
Yeah, that's rough, buddy. It's not
It's
about
literally that's rough, buddies.
yeah,
Yeah, it's like yeah, clearly I can't compete with that, but I'm still going to give you some compassion
yeah.
because you're human and I'm human.
And again, the fact that like a psychopath has no ability to feel empathy, but does still have the ability to feel or experience sympathy, which is a choice, indicates that again, empathy lacks any kind of moral content. You can't be, but sympathy, which is an action you decide to take, does have moral content. Because again, someone like David Wood doesn't have empathy, but he can have mountains of sympathy. So again, like one is moral content, the other one's not.
What I have learned is that as a society, we need to care about boys and men at least as much as we care about girls and women, because our success is so inextricably linked that it is pointless to care about one group without being aware of and concerned with the health and wellness of the other. The world looks completely different than it did 20 years ago, and needless
Yep.
to say, gender roles look completely different than they did 20 years ago. We need to be communicating about how men and women are supposed to relate to each other now that the roles are no longer explicit. Instead, the state of gender discourse has become a terrible canoe trip down an unpleasant river, and nobody is having a good time.
Yeah, to be fair, when all of the gender norms got tossed aside, I mean not all of them, but you know what I mean. When the gender norms got
Yeah.
tossed aside, that ended up turning masculinity and femininity into a bit of a negotiation. But no one actually wants to take the time to actually sit down and negotiate what the terms of masculinity and femininity are. In fact, a lot of people get rather fucking pissy about it if you try to have that conversation, which means that people don't
Which
enter into relationships with the same with an understanding about what they should expect.
I also think because there is no conversation, people shouldn't be surprised when we attempt to revert back to the old known ways either. That just seems kind of ridiculous. Like, if you're not going to tell me what I need to do, why wouldn't I just go back to something that clearly worked before anyway? Why is that so bad?
Well, it's not necessarily even that. I mean, you are correct in that it is definitely easier to just default to what worked beforehand, and to be fair, it's justifiable to realize to default to what works. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. But at the same time, there's also the thing of you have a rational self interest that you are totally justified in seeking. And if, again, it is against your rational self interest to engage in the negotiation implied, then you might just choose a system that doesn't actually require the negotiation because everything is already preset. Because, again, you're still looking for that masculinity or femininity as a balance. But again, if they're not willing to negotiate it with you, then it might just be in your rational self interest to just default to what came before because
Yeah,
that
that's my
is
point, though.
established.
Like,
Yeah. No, but
yeah,
sorry.
that's my point. Like,
Yeah.
there doesn't seem to be that discussion. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, why wouldn't I just like, again, if people aren't willing to discuss, why wouldn't we just revert? It just seems kind of self-defeating to change the
And,
ways and not say
and
what we
it's
change to.
and it's not like, for example, people don't like tomboys. So women who actually have some understanding of male interest or some interest in the same thing men do. Like, men love it when women are interested in the same, authentically interested in the same things that they are, because then it's more to share with their prospective wife. And to be fair, depending on what it is, there are women who actually do appreciate it when a man is interested in some of the same things, just as long as they're not overly interested in the same things.
Yeah.
Uh, and
Hey,
again,
babe, want to see how I dress up my character in my MMO?
like,
Like,
babe,
unironically, it's like,
please
yes.
play the game. I've been watching you make this character for 10 hours, for 20
See,
minutes.
I see. I feel like that would be me doing the character creation, and then whoever I'm with would get tired of me because I'm going to end up with a tomboy at this point. There's no
what?
way my autism will allow anything else.
What was
But
like?
I digress.
Like? What's the hex code for the Khoisan skin tone? Is-
No, 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 no. The butt's not quite the right proportion. Gotta move that
I,
slider down a little. What? I,
Hon- honey, what's the hex code for hazel eyes? What?
fuck.
When the character creator is just a little bit too involved, right?
Woo, that was me playing Atlas my first time.
Ooh, I can
Horvey.
ooh, I can give a little crook to what? Anyway, all right. Let's
We
get
have
back to the
women's
video,
rights
I guess.
advocates on one side rowing one direction, and men's rights on one side rowing the opposite direction, and nobody's getting anywhere. We've gone in so many circles. Everybody is frustrated, dizzy, and nauseous. And a lot of people are just giving up, which is understandable. We need to coordinate our
Hold on,
oranges. And a lot of people are just giving up.
hold on. Son of a bitch. No sex, no dating, no marriage, no children. Interested in 4B movement grows. Um, yeah, that's a Korean thing that became popular in America for some reason. Um,
which is understandable. We need to coordinate our oaring, and that can only happen if we learn how to communicate effectively about issues and we learn how to validate each other's lived experiences without constantly one-upping each other to prove that one group has it worse than the other.
I will have to say though, validating is fine when like the problem is real, but validation
Correct.
of a problem, one, can't interfere with getting the problem solved. And
Yeah, I always thought the necessity, the obsession with validation was also kind of maybe like to some degree tied with the power slash control. Like they want you to admit you're wrong, even if you yourself didn't do anything wrong almost. I'm not saying that's like what the individuals do, but it does seem like as a whole that is tied. The obsession with validation seems tied with the admit that you oppressed us, even if you've never oppressed us, because you know the whole sins of the father thing and
yeah.
whatnot.
Well, okay, so part of it goes with like if you're telling someone to validate their feelings that you did them wrong somehow, then yeah, it is definitely a power move if because then the question should be, hey, did I actually do this or did you like misinterpret what was going on? Because again, you have to be able to recognize that you can be wrong. That is a thing that happens. Everyone is wrong sometimes. Um, but also, we also have to be careful not to validate things that are just not correct as well. Like your feelings aren't always correct, and validating your feelings when they're wrong is kind of stupid. So again, we got
It,
to be careful
yeah.
to thread that balance of yeah, sure, validate the. It's fine to validate the experiences that are genuine and correct for the situation, but you still have to actually solve the problem. And then you also have to ensure that hey, is my reaction to a situation actually proportionate? Because if someone cuts you off in the middle of the road and then you know you chase them down and you jump out of your car with the fucking axe, I don't know that we should validate that.
I
Like,
think we should validate that with a police record and you in jail.
right? It would seem to me that
Yeah.
like it would seem to me that like again context is kind of key. But I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
she agree.
No, for sure, for sure.
I'm pretty sure she agrees with us. To be clear, but that being said, I'm
No,
just saying this for
so
absolute clarity.
correct, correct. We're just what's the phrase? Reductio ad absurdum at this point, just to make
Yeah,
sure.
That doesn't do anything helpful. The aim of my channel is to facilitate a conversation about the problems facing boys and men because we cannot have a healthy and safe and productive society without healthy, safe, and productive men. For the rest of
agreed.
this video, I want to get into how this documentary changed my understanding of both the feminist movement and of the men's rights movement. To start out, I want to talk about what I think has gone wrong in the feminist movement. And to do that, we have to have an understanding of what's
Marxism.
happening on a physiological level.
I would actually say, I mean, yeah, that did definitely go wrong, but I would also say spiritualism because people like to gloss over the fact that much of the first wave feminist movement was informed by spiritualism, and that even though, again, you don't have to be a spiritualist or a Marxist to be a feminist, the reasoning, or at least the influence of spiritualism and Marxist thought on feminism is still fairly apparent on people, again, who aren't necessarily explicitly Marxist or spiritualist themselves.
It's kind of like when you're talking about tick history, like the origins of a word also carry its like initial meaning regardless of changes over time. Same with movements fundamentally when they get hijacked or pushed certain things in there at their roots.
Yes.
Level. So I'm going to start out with a brief overview of how the nervous system functions, because if we want to understand any of this, we need to know how the nervous system functions. My favorite way to understand the nervous system is using polyvagal theory. The idea of polyvagal theory is that our nervous system has three states. The first is just what I call the green. It is our rest and digest. When we are regulated, we're in this green state. Our body is calm and connected. We're curious, we're open, we can connect with other people, and we're able to be compassionate and present in the moment. We can see that our body functions really well when we're in this state. This is an optimal state of functioning. But when our nervous system detects a threat, it sends us up into another state, which is our fight or flight. I just call this being in the yellow. When we're in the yellow, there is still a chance that we're going to survive this threat. You can see right here it says I can, referring to I can survive. So we are either moving toward the threat to fight it, or we're moving away from the threat to escape it. But there is still an idea that we're going to live. Physiologically, we can see that our blood pressure and our heart rate increase, our fuel availability increases, as does our adrenaline. It's really important to notice that when we're in fight or flight, our ability to relate to others decreases, which makes sense, right? Like if you are actually fighting to stay alive, it doesn't make sense to be like, hey, I'm gonna like relate to everybody and make new friends. Like, no, that system needs to turn off because all that matters is our survival in this moment. If
Remember when we were talking about Gramsci,
No,
and
I literally was just thinking of that. I was just thinking of that so hard.
yeah, again, it's not on accident. A lot of this is these people that like I keep complaining about did understand human beings quite well. They just didn't understand the rest of the world.
the threat continues and our body is realizing, okay, there's a chance that we might not survive this threat, we can see that it switches from I can to I can't. And when people are in the freeze state, it's basically preparation for death. The body really slows down just to conserve energy to try and survive.
Okay, so to be clear, this part isn't established fact, but it is an interpretation of the freeze state. Another explanation for the freeze state is that sometimes actually like freezing will prevent an attacker. Like for example, how do you what do they tell you to do if like you're attacked by a grizzly bear? You play dead.
I was gonna
Because
say, you're gonna have to answer that one, fam. I don't think I've ever been told what to do if I've been attacked by a grizzly bear.
first protect your neck, and second fucking play dead. Because like if it's not trying to eat you, it just wants to get you to not be a threat to something, be it like its cubs or its sense of like peace or whatever. But yeah, freeze and it'll leave you alone. The freeze actually is a valid defense mechanism from time to time. So I don't really think that like this is your body preparing to die as much as it is another
The extreme end,
survival
yeah, the
yeah.
extreme end.
We can see the heart rate and the blood pressure decrease. Our facial expressions and our eye contact decrease. So does our social behavior and our attunement to human voices. So, our nervous system very much informs how we relate to people. So, when we're in the yellow or when we're in the red, it becomes much harder to listen to people, to relate to people, or to connect with people in any way. Because if we're trying to survive, it doesn't make sense to be empathetic and open and connected. The part of our brain that is scanning for danger and responds to it by mobilizing our nervous system into either a fight or flight response or a freeze response is sometimes called the reptile brain because it's so automatic it doesn't even seem human. It's just reactionary in the way that a reptile would be. When our nervous system is activated, we are going to over perceive stimuli as a threat because it makes way more sense to do so. If our nervous system has determined that there is danger, it's way better to be safe than sorry. It's like a smoke alarm. You'd rather have a functioning smoke alarm that will go off once in a while when you're making toast than to have a smoke alarm that will never accidentally go off and might accidentally not go off when your house is on fire. It's that same principle. What this documentary demonstrated really well on a nervous system level is that when people are taught over and over that they are oppressed by the patriarchy, what I think is happening is that it's teaching their nervous system to perceive any narrative that centers the male experience as an imminent threat to their safety. I observed this happening in myself. As I was watching this documentary, there were a few times where I actively got mad. Like I had a fight response. I felt my heart rate increase and I noticed that my cheeks were getting flush and that my breath was getting more shallow. My nervous system's reactivity is because I have been taught to perceive all male power as a threat to my safety. So when I hear men speaking about the ways in which they're disenfranchised, my nervous system perceives that as danger. Because rather than hearing what is happening, which is men advocating for their health and well-being for the most part, my nervous system experiences men advocating for themselves as oppressors attempting to access more power with which to oppress. Even though logically I know that that's not necessarily an accurate way of understanding the world, My nervous system doesn't know that. My nervous system isn't logical, it's reactionary by nature, as are all of our nervous systems. That's kind of the point of nervous systems. My nervous system recognizes that it's evolutionarily advantageous to overperceive something as a threat than to underperceive it as a threat.
And by the way, so this is actually how I think a lot of progressive and a lot of I hate to use the left right binary, but the extremes on both sides actually functions. Is that again any challenge to the order which is stabilizing to the world or leading to that eschatological point? So is itself perceived as an existential threat, whether it actually is or not. You definitely see this, for example, with queer theory informed individuals who, for example, think that like, oh yeah, maybe we shouldn't give puberty blockers to children. And then if you see someone freak out about that, I think that this might actually be part of what explains that. Is that it's that part of the brain telling them that this is an existential threat to them, whether or not it actually is, because they've been trained to see things this way. Um, you also
It
see
just
this
seems
like,
interesting that you could.
huh?
Oh yeah, yeah. It just seems interesting that you could affect the nervous system, something biological, with what is fundamentally outside and non-biological information,
Yeah, again,
or
you're
at least
there's
it's just
obviously
weird.
there's an interface between the conscious part of the brain and the unconscious part of the brain. So it's not that it's not that strange that you would be able to help to slightly rewire the reptile brain to respond to something perceived by the mammalian brain. Like that part's not that hard to figure out. But like because you don't exactly need to know neurology to do this. This is all doable by psychology. Um, but yeah, it's like when you see like the trans activists sometimes freak out about shit like this, or when you see, for example, a progressive, they just lose their mind over fascism that doesn't actually exist. This is what I think is going on: is that they have been trained to have their nervous system react in a survival mode when they're encountered with opposition, which, by the way, since they are less able to actually understand what you're trying to say in this mode, again, helps to keep the indoctrinated in place. Definitely bad. Hold on. L Carp 21 just commented, "Deaf bad experience with her dad or ex." Uh, this lady? No. Well, maybe. Uh, this one
I was,
effectively
gonna,
got, huh?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't know about this particular person, but considering their pro masculinity, I wouldn't exactly put that as my first guess.
And once I perceive a threat, logic goes out the window because I'm no longer in my logic part of my brain. My nervous system is activated, which is the part of my brain that is protecting me. My nervous system is still experiencing this rhetoric as if I were still an angry 20-year-old fight the patriarchy feminist, which is a far cry from where I am now. But my nervous system isn't going to update because, once again, it's not logical. So let's dig into this a little bit more. Here is my hypothesis on why I had never heard about or cared about any men's rights issues up until this point. I was taught to view all issues of power and all issues of gender only through the lens of the patriarchy and through the oppressed oppressor narrative. Whether or not that's a good or even accurate way of understanding the world is beside the point of this analysis. We can talk about it later. What we're talking about is the implication of this narrative on a nervous system level. I'm going to show you a clip from the documentary that was exactly how I was taught to think about gender.
Political organizing comes from a feeling of victimization, which is why the men's rights movement makes that claim that men are the victims of discrimination. But it doesn't have much traction because, you look around and it's hard to see it. We don't have movements called, straight liberation. The question I would pose rhetorically is the men's rights movement really the gender version of the white nationalist movement?
Right there, again, you got the again. Remember when we were talking about the relation between all of these intersectional ideologies? The whole white nationalism, like fear mongering by the CRT groups. And then it's like, oh, is
Yeah.
this really the gender version of this? Like, yeah, because it's the same fucking thing. It is the same logic. It is the same logic. Patriarchy is just feminism's version of white nationalism for critical race theory, which is just the fucking American racist version of fucking the bourgeoisie and capitalism for Marxism. It's all the same fucking thing structurally. They just have different areas of focus. Marxism just happens to be economic. Feminism just happens to be concerned with sex. And then you have like CRT is focused with American race relations. It's all it is. But structurally, the logic is basically identical.
Because there are plenty of white people who say that they are the victims of reverse discrimination. So
Far be it from me, far be it from me, the Hispanic person, doing the recording, but it's true. There are people who are reverse discriminated. People have won lawsuits about this exact fucking issue. It is a thing that's been going. It is a thing that has happened.
Yeah.
So of course it's not going to have very much traction. You can't really organize the people who are superordinate.
I didn't realize it until this point, but this is the reason why I was so bummed that everyone kept asking me to watch this documentary. Think about what he is implying with this sentiment. Is the men's rights movement the gendered version of the white nationalist movement? Effectively, what he is saying is that men's rights activists can and potentially should be considered to be as dangerous as domestic terrorists, solely on the basis that they are advocating for men, and specifically potentially white and able-bodied men. When we understand the world through the oppressed-oppressor narrative, anytime men organize, we should understand that as a power grab. And remember that this idea isn't being presented by someone on a Reddit forum. This idea is being presented by a university professor.
Although I will have to pause this
Yeah.
right now. I do find it. She is right about that, but I do find it funny that like in recent years, since the release of that movie, um, the whole white nationalist claim has basically just been largely recognized on the right side that it's just a leftist conspiracy theory at this point because it's just so fundamentally disconnected from reality. Like no one in any serious area of power actually believes in that particular ideology. So everyone knows when they bring this up, they're bullshitting you. Or most people know when they bring this up that they're not being a serious person. And that's kind of what needs to happen is a lot of these tools that they have, they just need to they need to be stripped of the power that they have, and the way you do that is you just like I don't give a shit. Like just don't give a shit. Although I will say that again, marking people this way is just like marking you as a Nazi or as a fascist is a way for them to, how would you say, mark you to die. 'Cause they won't do it themselves. They won't kill you themselves, but they will wait for someone crazy enough who believes to kill you for them, and then they will celebrate your death. So if someone
Oh
calls
yeah.
you a white nationalist falsely, that's the same thing going on here. They may very well not believe it, but if they don't believe it, or if they do believe it, they probably don't really care if you die, and they might actually prefer it. Just putting that out
No,
there.
yeah, no, for sure.
Theoretically, someone who should understand the implication of the doctrine that they're teaching. And here's one of the problems with choosing to see social justice through the oppressor-oppressed framework. Truly understanding any human dynamic requires the understanding of more than one perspective. I was taught one perspective. I was taught that all male organization around men's rights was an act of violence against women.
Ah, yes. Again, they frame these things as equivalent to justify it happening to you. If mean words are violence, then there's nothing wrong with punching someone in the face for saying something mean to them. On the other hand,
Because violence should be equated with violence, yeah.
because it's self-defense. On the other hand, if silence is violence, which is another thing some of these people have said, then not participating in the dialogue at all calls you out as subject for violent retribution for not being
Yeah,
in support of the cause.
it's just it's the same thing the CRT tries to do with if they help you, it's for racist reasons. If they don't help you, it's because they're racist. It's just oh, you can't win. Like, gee, I wonder why you'd set up a system where the oppressor can't win. No, the supposed oppressor. Yeah,
Well,
that's
you
interesting,
have
isn't it?
you have to set it up in such a way, and this is what we were talking about at one point with polylogism, where the two classes think in so fundamentally different ways that are irreconcilable, which means that negotiation between the two conflicting classes is
Can't
not
even happen.
possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, so either you have to so you have to use force in some way to extract what you want from the other. And in the case of, for example, CRT, it's leveraging legal authority in order to get what you want.
No,
Like
yeah, that
you give us everything we want, or we will take you to court, and then even if we lose, we will still bankrupt you.
And obviously, that led to me believing that there were no men's rights issues that were worth listening to. I was taught that the subordinate cannot organize because they are not victimized. So that when they do organize, I should consider that organization to be something bad. If I hear about a domestic terrorist group organizing near my house, I'm not going to be like, oh, maybe they have some good ideas. Maybe I'll just stop in and say hello. I am going to assume that whatever's happening.
Hold on, honey. I'm trying to listen to. I'm trying to listen to Akbar tell me about Pashtunwali. You were saying about
I
this
was
thing
gonna say.
called. You're telling me something about Bachabazi. What is that?
I was like about to say it's like you Nazi sound kind of interesting. Please tell me an ethnic Jew more.
It's so funny that the fucking like the Spanish person brings up the fucking Muslim, and then the Jew in the conversation brings up the Nazi. Truly, birds of
What
a
else?
feather.
I was gonna say like not much of a far stretch there. I could throw my hat into the ring so easily.
I will never suffer Spain to be called Al Andalus.
Over there is wrong and bad and is a threat to oppressed people. I was taught to view the world through the oppressor oppressed narrative, and I was taught that only issues that fit within that narrative are worthy of my time and attention. But it turns out many of the issues that specifically men face do not fit within the liberal feminist framework of understanding social justice. As a result, people who subscribe to that line of thinking do not realize that there are ways that men are oppressed systemically. And that includes white men, and that includes white, able-bodied men. It's something I really didn't realize either until I got really deep in the literature and then taped all of these ideas onto my wall. Anytime men organize in a way that's not in the framework of the feminist movement, it is understood as violence. Here's a good example of that.
In 2012, Dr. Warren Farrell was speaking on behalf of men's issues at the University of Toronto in Canada. A feminist group protested the event.
Be fucking ashamed of yourself.
Again, what is the punishment for rape?
I actually don't know.
Well, I mean,
Like,
historically speaking, it's been castration or death.
oh yeah. Okay, I
Yeah.
see what you mean.
And what are they calling him?
Yeah, yeah.
Again, when I point out to people that this has been more ubiquitous throughout the culture than people think, this is the shit I'm talking about. It's like, yeah, they're calling you a rape apologist. What do we do with people who rape people, who commit rape in this country? Depending on where you're at, you can get years taken away from your life. You can be put to death. You can be marked to die by their family, or you can and you can be put on a sex offender registry. So even if you don't die, that's what they want to happen to you.
Pretty much they just want your life to be permanently ruined.
Mm-hmm.
So that you either effectively commit unlife or etc. I
Yeah.
imagine.
I mean, there is a reason why some of these people get a little uncomfortable when you bring up the male suicide rate. And a lot of these people will actually make light and fun of it.
You're fucking
Yeah.
scum. You are fucking scum. You fucking rape apologist, incest supporting, woman hating fucking scum.
Also, where did she even come up with this? Like, you fucking rape apologist, incest supporting, woman hating fucking scum. Okay, we can give fucking scum and woman hating to the like lizard brain going off on full I need to survive mode. This is an existential threat. Where did she come up with rape apologist? Where did she come up with incest supporting? What what does she know that leads her to believe this person supports incest?
That's-
You get where I'm
That
going with
sounds
this, right?
that sounds like that seems like Islamophobic is.
Well, I mean, considering the prevalence of cousin marriages in that particular culture, right? I mean, fair enough. This
I'm just saying,
there
interesting.
there
This
is a reason for
he should have clapped back.
there is a reason for the discrepancy of success between the Muslim world and the rest of the world, to put it bluntly.
I was
But
just he should have clapped back with that, saying he supports incest is Islamophobic.
but
I'm so-
God damn it.
Ooh. Oh,
First stream with you on here, and I'm gonna get banned. Anyway,
story of my life.
anyway, but yeah, it's like again, again, this is the thing I was saying earlier. This is not just here to mark you as shame. This is here to justify if anything bad happens to you because of what you say to someone. You know, this person supports rape. Like, what do you think society should do to people who support rape? And then work
Exactly.
from
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Fucking scum. Yeah, just another.
I just want to listen to someone else's opinion. I'm not even on a side here. I just listen to as many people as I can.
You know what though? Why would you pay money to fucking support a fucking rape apologist if you weren't fucking one?
I never heard him say.
This is some solipsistic thinking right here. But then again, she's in fight or flight mode right now. She's not thinking rationally. And yeah, it's kind of hard to reason with people when they have to be de-escalated first.
How do you even de-escalate that? Like, actually.
This woman is not perceiving this situation as a random man choosing to attend a lecture with a set of ideas being presented that she doesn't agree with. She's experiencing him as an oppressor who is looking for further ways to oppress. And because that's how she's experiencing herself, her behavior is acceptable to both her and to the people who also subscribe to that narrative. Her nervous system has sensed serious danger. She is in full fight response. And she's surrounded by a group of people who are also in a full fight response.
This is what men's rights look like! This is what men's rights look like! This is what men's rights look like!
I'm going to show you.
I mean, the irony of one side is completely unhinged, screaming, while the other side is just trying to have a peaceful conversation.
I was gonna say the irony's not lost on me. This is quite the trope.
The complete inversion of reality, and if you wrote a scene like this, it would be seen as campy, and how funny it is.
One last nervous system thing because I think it's one of the fatal flaws of liberal feminism. I call this the nervous system flip-flop.
I think she might also be maybe using the wrong term here, because there are different versions of feminism, and some of them don't seem to have the same Gnostic underpinning. Like, I've been trying to do more research into anti-abortion feminism, and it doesn't seem to be nearly as Gnostic. I do still see problems with anti-abortion feminism, but it doesn't seem to be nearly as Gnostic as other branches of feminism, especially because like they don't have this intrinsic hatred of being. With the radical feminists, where they're like motherhood is oppression, being is
Yeah, no, for sure, yeah.
yeah, it's like a radical hatred of being in itself, of becoming. Whereas like anti-abortion feminists are pretty fucking hard line with like, no, being is itself good, and no, like the circumstances through which someone comes into being doesn't matter. Everyone is made with infinite metaphysical worth. It's like, okay, these people actually are sane. They still have a number of errors in the way that they think, but I can actually have a real conversation with an anti-abortion feminist, because they seem to be at least reasonable people. But I'm not.
That seems
I'm not an
to
expert in this
me.
either.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's the thing. Is like I wonder if is I guess which wave would that be, or like which would that be a response
Well,
to something like the
you have
timeline? I guess is what I'm saying is where that comes in.
you also have to remember again that feminism, like Marxism and all these other intersectionalities, dialectically evolve. So
No, for sure, for sure.
yeah. So their assumptions will change radically over time too. You got to remember, like again, third positionism and Marxism have a shared ideological root, but it's also entirely possible to independently evolve similar ideas. Remember when we were talking about like the emperor system in Japan, and I had to explain.
Hmm.
I explained this like, look, I was always weirded out at how similar the emperor system looked to like the way that the Nazi view of the Führer looked, where the Führer was the shaman, the embodiment of Odin in time, in space, and how the Emperor system saw the Emperor as the temporal manifestation and descendant of Amaterasu and the Ameno Mina Kanushi no Kami, the goddess of the sun and rulership and the god of unfolding creation, and how this basically turns the emperor into a sort of near monotheistic god under whom all other divinities like orbit. And then I actually found out exactly why that was, and it's because that's exactly what it is. But it didn't come from a modification of Hegel's worldview to Shinto. It actually came because of the work of Kokugaku scholars who tried to center Japan as the center of the cosmos after the Chinese were dethroned by the Manchus, and therefore they interpreted that as as disfavor from heaven, and so they needed a new center for the world, and they made the emperor, which was uniquely Japanese, the center of the world in a metaphysical setting. So
That makes sense. Yeah.
wildly similar ideas can come about completely independently. And I don't know that anti-abortion feminism is maybe just completely mislabeled and maybe not even really related to feminism. I'm not entirely sure. I have to do more research into that because
Yeah.
it does not seem to me to be the same kind of dialectical madness as the rest of the feminist movement. So I do have to do
I
more
guess that's
research
why I
into that.
also asked. Yeah, that's why I also asked, like, where on the timeline would that fall, and if it was like like, because I know the people like talk about how like early waves of feminism were and naturally anti-abortion due to the fact that the man had the call in that. So it's like I wonder how much of that is like either a regression or
I
etc.
I
That's what I was
think
asking.
so. From what I understand, is that anti-abortion feminism has a lot to do with Catholic adherence to feminism. Again, I don't think Catholicism is compatible with feminism, not because women bad, but because feminism isn't just women's rights. It is a whole system of beliefs that actually have nested implications. Again, we mentioned earlier that first wave feminism was heavily influenced by spiritualism, and you
Hmm.
know, much of modern feminism is heavily influenced by Marxism, and the Catholic Church rejects both spiritualism and Marxism and many of the beliefs that are carried over into other worldviews that come from them. So again, I don't believe that feminism is compatible in for that particular reason. That being said, those people who disagreed with me and happen to be allegedly both Catholic and feminist are the ones who seem to have started the anti-abortion feminist movement. And I have a sneaking suspicion that anti-abortion feminism actually came about from maternity feminism, or maternal feminism, which is a form of feminism that centers motherhood itself as the locus of knowing. And I think that that would make a lot more sense, but I have to do more research into that.
Valid.
I'm a trauma therapist, so I'm really used to this flip flop happening when I'm working with clients. We're sitting in session and they're fine and chill and they're talking about something, and a memory or a feeling triggers them, and I recognize that their nervous system activates. When that happens, I bring their activation to their awareness. I give them a few skills to deactivate their nervous system and bring them back into the green. That is incredibly important that people know how to do that because our thinking is distorted when our nervous system is activated. So when people are speaking about things that are important to them, it's really important that they're in the green because otherwise they're not not logical. We all know this, but our brain thinks differently when we're sensing danger. And even the idea of a threat can activate our nervous system. So people in this movement recognize that male participation is required. And they genuinely do realize that men have issues that are worthy of care and attention. The justification is that men are also oppressed by the patriarchy, so they'll only recognize issues that fit comfortably within that framework, but nonetheless, they still acknowledge that there are issues. But they
Again, you have a problem, but we still have the answer, even though we're not listening to you about what your problems are.
Yeah, it's just it's the control slash me.
Yeah.
cannot hold space for any men talking about men's issues because it centers the male experience and that immediately flips them into a fight response. I know about this well because I used to do this a lot. My parents still tease me about it because, like, at dinner parties, I would always correct people and make sure that they are using a feminist lens because I really did perceive any social issues looked at outside of that lens as a threat. Here's an example of this happening in real time. This is Big Red. She's a very loud feminist of the 2010s.
I forgot this woman existed, to be perfectly honest.
So,
What
how old were
a
you when you started
nickname.
calling yourself a feminist?
Oh, this.
Or how many years ago?
It was probably
Oh my god.
3 years ago, I guess you can say. I'm relatively new. Yeah, but I'm pretty loud, so silence only helps the oppressor, not the oppressed.
And that's why silence is violence.
Holy fucking
Again, this shit is not that hard. This shit is not that hard. But people like to make it much more difficult than it actually is. If you want to study the genealogy of all these things, it does get a little complicated in the sense of like a lot of moving parts. But again, none of this shit is that hard.
A lot of MRAs say that feminism doesn't fight for the rights of men. What would you say to that?
So she knows male participation is necessary, but then when Cassie makes a statement that centers the male experience, she flips into a fight response. Look how her body language changes.
Crimea River. Really, because feminism is a movement about the discrepancies when it comes to women's equality. Because we're still not there yet. You know, so don't even start with that whole, oh, but you don't think about the men's issue.
If she were wearing a heart rate monitor, a sweat detector, we'd most likely see an increase in her heart rate and an increase in her perspiration because she was clearly having a physiological response to this idea.
Ah, hello there, Rose.
Looks like she's about to have an aneurysm.
Yeah, I have no idea how long it's been since you got in here, but yeah. So we were talking a little bit doomer pill earlier, and talking about why Kirsche might very well be right about how things are going to get worse before they get better. Right now, we are just talking about we're watching a video that talks about one of the issues we were talking about, which is uh, psychology. Uh, so yeah, we're talking about feminism and the red pill. It's it'll make more sense if you when you watch the video. I'm gonna clip this from the VOD and upload it as its own video. uh, but yeah, we've been talking about the history of Marxist and spiritualist influence on feminism, and we're currently on how lizard brain psychology actually interferes with talking to people across different political spectrums.
Well, then you know what? Start your own goddamn movement, which they have, but maybe make it a little more about legitimate issues like custody and alimony and things that you think are unequal.
The irony of that comment is that men were literally trying to have a dialogue about their issues, and in the movie, the feminists pulled the fire alarm.
A feminist group protesting the event illegally pulled the fire alarm and successfully shut down the event.
They might have been talking about feminist-approved talking points.
I will have to pause this though, because again, you may notice that like when Big Red was talking, one of the things she talked about was she highlighted women's equality. But that's a strange way to say that because again, and I don't know if she's putting this much thought into it, but like equality would imply for men and women to be equal if you're talking like equality of the sexes. So even
Unless, of course.
well,
yeah, I was gonna say unless, of course.
Again, remember
it's
what happened.
They're trying to be equal to something else.
Well, the thing I was going to say is remember what got her upset was
Yeah.
centering the conversation's focus away from women's issues, i.e., away from her onto men, who she sees as the oppressor. So again, she only cares about equality insofar as it can be framed from the woman's perspective. That's why she says it that way. Oh, feel free to do that, Red. Like, if you want to lurk, that's fine. But yeah, we're probably gonna finish this up. It's gonna be a while because we've been stopping to talk on a lot of points. But yeah, but that's what I was saying is that she finds it odious, like dangerous, to focus the idea of equality, which should center both men and women together. But she has to specify it as women's equality, as in,
That's what I was saying. It's like,
yeah,
I wonder if like
she doesn't
if
really
maybe that
want
was like,
equality. That right there is a slip of the tongue. She does not want equality. She does not want men and women to be the same. She wants women centered as the locus of reality.
correct. I wonder how much that also is like, given how sometimes, like I pointed out, that the since it's about control and domination, I wonder how much of that for some of these people is a shadow projection of the fact that they see,
And
even
they
though women are
themselves are
oppressed, they should
controlling.
be seen as God. Yeah, like they should be seen as the gods rather than like the people. Like, I wonder how much of that, given the like Gnostic roots and stuff, like how much of it becomes almost like a narcissistic shadow projection of, no, I need to become one with the spirit again, since I'm part of the spirit and you aren't. I'm not. I have the knowledge, therefore I am godly and you are not, because you can neither obtain nor comprehend this knowledge.
One
So
is
you are one of the
intrinsically
ones who
authentic,
are,
and the other one's not.
yeah,
Yeah,
basically. And that's what I was like. At that point, I wonder if it's like a shadow projection of, treat me like the god I am. It, basically, I'm going in
it's a little
circles.
narcissistic. Yeah,
Yeah, I definitely I got a scent of that.
yeah.
Oh, I'm
It.
sure there's a much more scent of that woman. Oh my god.
Oh
Every time I
god.
see her, it's like she probably reeks.
Oh my god. Well, I don't know about that, but but
I'm pretty given the huge movements and stuff that some of them push, it's like, I don't know, man.
yeah, it
It smells like death.
fair.
But everyone was so activated that nobody could listen.
Legitimate issues like custody and alimony and things that you think are unequal, which all stem from patriarchy.
Again, there's this whole idea that, like, again, since men create patriarchy and patriarchy exists to serve men, any problem of men rooted in patriarchy is therefore man's fault. They don't see men as individuals; they see them as a class. Which is why, again, these people oftentimes, not all of them, some of them do have the ability to consider people as individuals, but a lot of these people in these class identity based movements, they don't really see you as an individual. They see you as as an instantiation of a class. So it's like, remember when we were talking about Platonism and
Yeah.
how, like, every instance of the like chair. This is technically Middle Platonism, but it gets the point. Shares in the same form of the chair. And in this case, we see that, like, this class conflict thing is very similar to Platonism in that the individual entity doesn't really exist outside of themselves. They are more emanations from this this class form, which is why they don't treat you as an individual. Because ultimately speaking, you are rooted in that same ontological foundation as everyone else in your class that's distinct from other classes.
Also, find I not to be on sidetrack. I almost want to jokingly have body language ghosts go over the way this lady talks, because her movements are beyond jerky. It's almost, I don't want to call it acting, but they're so, her motions are so
It is
even with
performance.
the understanding of the,
Yeah.
yeah, but like that's what I was like, that's not the nervous system stuff, because like I know what it's like to get like when you're actually like overstimulated from like negative emotions and you freak out. Like these are definitely performative. I'm like, I want her to just respond to this lady's interview and be
To
like,
be
what the
fair,
fuck?
she's moving not just as if she's angry or afraid, but if she's ultimately insulted by the idea that maybe we should consider men's, like, struggles.
Yeah, but also the movements are almost jerky like a snake.
Yeah, as in like again, insulted and mocking.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Not from, oh my God, feminists are trying to take away our kids. No, dipshit. That's not what we're trying to do. We're not trying to do that. I mean, if they look at the root causes of why, for example, women get custody more often than men do, women are supposed to be the mothers. They're supposed to be the natural born caregivers. So obviously, duh, you has a vagina, so obviously you're going to be able to take care of the kitties.
So she just got activated again right there. She calmed her nervous system down. She soothed herself by recentering the feminist perspective.
That's really what it is. It all stems from sexism against women.
And stick with me here because we're looking at
Sexism against women is when women get custody of children. Again, it's that whole idea of motherhood is itself a carceral reality. That motherhood itself is an imprisoning factor.
They're
Again,
supposed to be motherly. That's why I freaked out and made a weird motion when I said kitties. No one calls them kitties, but I do. Like I'm a witch who's going to devour them. Oh,
oh, fair enough.
I, I,
She probably does support abortion, to be perfectly honest.
oh no, she definitely is one. That's what I'm saying. Like the way she like, it's even referring to children so condescendingly. It's like, oh my god, you're just actually just a repulsive human.
Yeah, it's like, but again, like she, there's this disdain for motherhood and a disdain for personal responsibility. Um, but yeah,
this from a nervous system perspective, not an ideological perspective. From a nervous system perspective, it makes sense that she's responding this way. It makes sense that liberal feminists don't want to listen to men because they're perceiving men as the oppressor. And if you're fighting against a villain, you don't want to give the villain more power. And that's how they're understanding this issue. This is why it becomes self-defeating. Even if people genuinely care about men and they genuinely want to understand and work toward correcting men's issues, it becomes very hard to get people inspired to care about men after they're taught that men are responsible for everything bad in the society. Feminism can't get anywhere without the participation of men. So if we want to get anywhere, we have to coordinate. This one-sided thing isn't working. People have been taught to think about issues of gender in black and white, but to only see the relationship between men and women as one where men hold all the power and use it to oppress women may be correct in some situations. Sure, but to say that the only relational dynamic that exists between men and women is one of power imbalance is simply incorrect.
this was also my main criticism when I was going to source sociology courses. I hate sociology, by the way. This was actually one of my
It's
main
fake and gay.
this was one of my main criticisms of conflict theory. Before this was all before I knew anything, by the way, about the history of Gnosticism in modern intellectual thought. But like just the idea that again, history is structured on the conflict between peoples instead of the interaction between peoples just seemed really fucking stupid, especially with how successful cultures and could have historically been that also did things like trade, not just war and you know uh, empire building. Just
Yeah.
how does conflict theory explain the success of neutral Morse-net? Yeah, sure, neutral Morse-net didn't it lasted like it, 500 years, but that was a 500 years of prosperity. And yeah, sure, it only existed because of the conflict between great powers that didn't want to go to war with each other. But it made a functional anarchist functionally an anarchist city state that did well all on its own, very well actually. So it's like, how the fuck how does conflict theory explain this? I never got a good answer to this, by the way.
That understanding
I imagine there
fundamentally
is no good answer nor answer to begin with.
Yeah, and to be perfectly honest, even back then, I could very quickly figure out that like conflict theory was basically just Marxist sociology, and so it just even when I was really young, and I was like, oh yeah, maybe communism's a good idea in theory, but it just doesn't work in practice. I'm way beyond that particular delusion. It's not even good in theory; it's evil in theory. But that being said, it was pretty obvious even back then when I knew essentially nothing about any of this stuff. It's like, yeah, no, this conflict theory in sociology is basically just scientific communism. Now, I would suggest it's not scientific in any way, shape, or form nowadays, but
lacks the complexity necessary to truly understand the relationship between men and women in the most technologically advanced society to ever exist. It's way too easy of an answer. It ignores all social forces but one. This issue is far more complicated than oppressed oppressor. But organizing and constructing an equitable society can only happen if there's actual listening happening. But the problem is that a lot of the modern social justice framework creates a dynamic in which one cannot even tolerate hearing a perspective outside of the feminist framework because they experience it as violence. And if we cannot...
Well, again, remember when we were talking about like gnosis? So if you have the salvific idea, that idea that will save man from its self estrangement in this false world, then anything that leads you astray from this enlightened idea is inherently carceral. It's inherently something to keep you estranged from yourself and in this carceral state in the world that is, again, you were flung into by causal powers and forces that are against your well being or, indifferent to it. So, yeah, it is an existential threat because you are putting other people in danger to not actually fulfill the project, which is to break the carceral nature of reality down to become more free. Like it is not just that; it's also there's an underlying ideological reason for this. There is also the thing that, like, again, if I center someone else and then I find out that their experience is fundamentally unlike anything that I've ever seen, and it's valid, and I've been the entire time suggesting that their world that their experiences are invalid, that also comes with a set of moral reckoning in the soul of the person who has to do that consideration. So there are
Yeah.
less than innocent reasons that people will sometimes not listen to you. Sometimes there are real motivations for someone to not give you an actual shake in explaining yourself.
Yeah, because if you break, it's like, since their platform is fundamentally made of glass, the moment you have put any pressure on it, it just snaps, and it's kind of like their entire mask and like persona is of that. It's, I imagine for a narcissist, which a lot of this ideology seems to promote and appeal to, like having that kind of event happen, truly shattering like their concept and like breaking through the bubble, is fundamentally like destructive for their like well-being, not just because of the whole nerve, but like fundamentally because of how a narcissist works. Like I imagine there's just like not much else to there's it's very hard to rebuild from that,
Yeah, well,
at least from what I can tell.
to be fair, I did work at a place one time where I had to deal with some feminists, and there is an issue of borderlines on this particular group too. So it's not just narcissism, but to be fair, there is a big overlap between narcissists and borderlines.
I was gonna say, I wonder if like solipsism has a similar problem where it's like breaking that bubble is just like they fundamentally like are
To be fair,
stranded.
there are there are very few real solipsists, but solipsistic thinking does, again, solipsistic thinking is defined by refusing to step outside or an inability to step outside of your own frame in order to understand someone else. I'll talk to you about this off stream at some point, but I have noticed that a lot of the criticisms of Berserk are solipsistic and narcissistic thinking. And I only just finally figured out how to finish my Darling in the Franks like video essay script. So I will be recording that. But uh, next time we end up meeting each other, I would like to talk about the possibility of uh, possibly collaborating on a Berserk project. So, but that's for a later time.
I was gonna say, holy crap, what a train.
having a perspective that doesn't center our experience, then why would men be willing to listen to a perspective that centers ours? So this documentary is almost 10 years old, but the gender discourse in 2024 looks remarkably similar to how it did when this documentary was first filmed. What was made incredibly evident to me in this documentary is that there's very little space held for men's issues within the modern liberal feminist movement, and that legacy continues to today. And I am a living testament to that. I am very well versed in feminist and social justice issues. I didn't even consider that any of these male experiences that are outside of the framework of the patriarchy were worthy of my time and attention until deciding to actively shift my perspective after realizing that what I've been taught to understand about gender isn't correct. I hate to say it, but I think a lot of issues that men face, because they don't fit within the framework of the patriarchy, they're not a concern for a lot of feminists. There is a huge problem with feminism, and the problem is that this line of thinking isn't willing to acknowledge the fact that men are oppressed systemically, and that a lot of the problems they experience do not fit within the framework of patriarchy, but that doesn't mean that they're less important or less real. And when I say that about feminism, I'm including myself in that because I am someone who's identified as a feminist for a very long time. As someone who really subscribed wholeheartedly to liberal feminism, I was like, no, of course I care about men's issues. Men's issues are important. But I'm now realizing that I didn't know any of them. And it's hard to advocate for something that you don't know about. I think that a lot of liberal feminist discourse is stuck in the place where it insists upon centering the female experience in all cases. But if we only center the female experience, we can only understand the experience of men in the way that they relate to us.
Okay, I'm gonna have to pause this here. She keeps saying the phrase liberal feminism, which the definition of that changes from person to person. So I am actually kind of interested in what she means when she says liberal feminism. Like, is she using it as a synonym to like equity feminism? Is she trying to say that like she's in the same camp as like Christina Hoff Summers? I highly doubt that. Uh, what does she mean by liberal feminist? I don't really
Yeah, no,
understand.
I when she says that to me, it felt like redundant. It's like I thought feminism fundamentally was a liberal like
Oh,
ideology too. So it's like, what does
oh
she?
no.
Yeah, like what does she mean?
No, it depends on again. It depends on how you use the word liberal. Americans have a very weird sense of the word liberal for some reason. They have fundamentally divorced it from its classical liberal roots and given it over to the progressives, which is a astoundingly like foolish thing to do, to be perfectly honest, because most of American conservatism is actually part of the liberal tradition, and
The
that's fine.
classic liberalism, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the classic liberal tradition, and there's nothing wrong with that. Scottish common sense realism has a real and actual like history to be proud of. But the dialectical inversion happened, and then liberalism got co-opted to progressivism. Yada yada yada. People forget that like there's two different, even within classical liberalism, there's two different kinds of liberalism. One on one founded by Scottish common sense, realism, which is actually a realist worldview, and then one founded on like the Kantian and post-Kantian ideologies, which is a idealist idea first movement. You know, largely the difference between English liberalism and French liberalism. It always comes down to that, doesn't it? The English versus the French. Anyway,
A tale as old as time.
right? But yeah. So I'm genuinely curious because like, whenever I get people to try to define what they mean by liberal feminism, the academics oftentimes have a very similar definition to each other if they feel like they're in a safe space. But the lay folk, the ones who oftentimes have no knowledge of first wave feminism and its again ties with spiritualism, they often have different definitions of liberal feminism, some of which are ad hoc to the situation at hand. But yeah, so I am curious genuinely as to what she means when she says liberal feminism. Like, what specifically are the foundational doctrines of liberal feminism as to what she's referring to?
You should ask her.
There's no
I'd probably come off as a crazy person. Could you fucking imagine? Like, hello, ma'am.
Come off.
Could you please submit to me a detailed 40-page analysis of what you mean by liberal feminism in this particular context, please? If you could submit that in the format of an analytical philosophy paper, I would much appreciate. I would
She's just like, what are you, a nutter?
What fucking most autistic like, random email ever. I'm pretty sure it's an Indian phishing scam at this point. Look, he even misspelled analytical.
Oh no.
no actual understanding there. The other problem with liberal feminism is that in order for a man to be listened to, he must be willing to look at the world through the lens of patriarchy, which means that he first must see himself as the oppressor. And I don't really
Ah, yes, the whole the struggle sessions, eh? Confess to your crimes, you stale end piece of white bread. God damn.
Ralph, what is that?
But yeah, I mean, it always breaks down to that whole. Well, you have to first humiliate yourself by admitting to things you never actually did, and then we'll accept you, but we'll never actually accept you.
I think that
Yeah.
inspires a
Yeah.
strong desire for participation under these circumstances. Men make up the majority of workers in many industries most affected by automation. Today, men are less likely than women to graduate high school or earn a 4-year college degree. Men are 4 times more likely than women to die by, but 10 percentage points less likely than women to access mental health care. We are experiencing a national dad deficit that not only affects women and children, but also hurts millions of American men who are disconnected from their families. Over the last several decades, girls have overtaken boys by nearly every metric in educational outcomes. Girls are thriving, and that's good news, but the data couldn't be more clear. Something is not working for the boys. It's quite frankly not fair for us to expect them to care about women's rights when anytime they try to care about men's rights, we accuse them of bigotry. I don't
So I will also say that this is probably again intentional. Like if you pay attention to the whole idea, because again, a lot of feminism is influenced by spiritualism and Marxism, but the Marxist influence comes from the whole reason of the dictatorship of the proletariat is to transcend and then abolish the class distinction. So you invert the class relationships. So the proletariat becomes the ruling class, the bourgeoisie becomes the subjugated class, and the idea is that this inversion should lead to a breakdown of the meaningful distinction between proletariat and bourgeoisie so that the class system itself is at once transcended and simultaneously abolished. The word that Hegel uses for this is Aufhebung. Uh, but this is primarily, I think, what you would see if you try to do this with sex classes too. So, to invert the patriarchy, woman has to be made as superior to man, and it is through this inversion of suffering, this inversion of domination, that the distinctions between the classes ultimately break down. And then what you're left with is a classless society at the end. Only problem here is that you can't really get rid of the class distinction between male and female for very fucking obvious reasons.
Uh, they're
But
gonna try. Don't worry.
yeah, to be fair, that whole idea of if we invert suffering, the classes will inevitably fall apart and bleed into one single, more authentic unity is just a cover for the inshitification of society for your own, again, prideful and envious purposes.
Yeah, no, it just and we've seen before it just doesn't work. I wonder
Yeah.
why.
I mean, I don't think it's supposed to work. I think a lot of the
Oh,
people
exactly.
who suggested this, maybe not the original feminists, but I do think at least Marx himself might have known that this shit wouldn't work and that this was entirely just a way to get back at the world for the crime of being. Because again, a lot of the shit Marx writes is kind of interesting. Like, yeah, sure, would he leverages Gnostic imagery in Das Kapital and on the Jewish question? So yeah, sure, maybe he's not being literal, but it is really fucking interesting that he is basically replicating Gnostic imagery in like a big it, to make his point. I mean, he wrote like a fucking grimoire author. To be perfectly honest, he couldn't write for shit. But that being said, that was not an accidental decision. There's a reason why he's leaning on that Gnostic structure in order to actually like communicate his message. That's a meaningful decision.
No,
It's not arbitrary.
no, of course.
don't think liberal feminism is working anymore, and it's not doing what liberal feminists want it to do. On both the feminist side and on the side of men's rights, we need to realize that men and women's issues are connected deeply. Men's issues are women's issues, and women's issues are men's issues. And the issues that men are facing right now should be central. These are issues impacting everyone. Overall, I think the entire social left needs to recognize that hating men isn't going to get us anywhere. We can justify cruelty and indifference toward the suffering of men as warranted because we already understand them as the people who set up this society to oppress us. Even if it were that simple, and that is what happened, revenge isn't a good way to make a society more equitable. We're traumatizing a whole generation of boys and men, nobody's caring enough about it, And I think a big reason for that is because if they didn't exist, then we wouldn't be oppressed. These problems were created in a system. And because of that, it means that we need to be willing to acknowledge more than one variable. We need to listen to and understand what men are experiencing right now. We need to learn how to be able to actually consider their perspective critically because it's worth listening to. It directly impacts everyone. The most intense moment that I had while watching this documentary is when I was sitting there and I was like, wait a minute, I've seen this before. But when I watched it the first time, it didn't mean anything to me. I watched it probably 5 years ago, and I remember sitting there and they'd bring up a point and I would intellectually smack it out of the air because of my general animosity toward what I perceived to be the oppressor. I had no ability to critically consider any point that was being made because I was experiencing everything that was said as a threat. So I know that I've said a lot of stuff that is inflammatory, but knowing what I know now, I'm realizing how necessary this conversation is.
If she thought that was inflammatory, she should have heard what we said, eh?
I was gonna say, excuse me, but well, oh my God, she said something that like triggered my brain into thinking, and I was like, I wonder. Fuck is on the tip of my tongue. There we go. Yeah, the idea of women. I guess it's funny that women believing men are the only source of their problems. When I've seen what women do to other women, I'm starting to think that maybe these women have never seen Mean Girls. But
Well, okay, so Alexander Grace, who is another channel that I watch, not just anyway, he does have a video, and I don't know if he's okay with reaction videos, so I'm not going to attempt it. But he does have a video explaining luxury beliefs and how the competition that men have with each other is different from the competition that women have with each other. Like the competition between men is oftentimes just direct competition, who's better and who's worse, pretty cut and dry. Whereas
yeah,
competition between women is often involves things like subterfuge and deception. The whole idea of keep your enemies, keep your friends close and your enemies closer is a more feminine way of thinking than a masculine way of thinking. And this actually explains a lot of catty female behavior where it's like, you two don't actually seem like you're friends at all. It's like, well, they're not. They're not. They're just keeping
yeah,
enemies closer. And one way that women seem to compete with each other is for resources for them and their children. And one way to compete with each other is to minimize the amount of children that another woman is having, as well as minimize their economic opportunities of the family. That way, there's more for the haves than the have-nots. And like, yeah, you know what? Actually, this does actually kind of explain a lot of why some women seem to support feminism, even though they have families of their own that seem to be doing well. Because the entire thing is, if you will, the sabotage of women that they see themselves in direct competition with by getting them to believe in feminist I don't want to say lies per se, but that's probably the best word. Lies of the feminist movement to disadvantage, their competition.
yeah.
I'd have to recheck what episode, what video that was, because that was a while ago. Um, but yeah, so this isn't completely innocent. Like the whole body positivity thing, for example, was not innocent. And it's like, yeah, no, morbid obesity is not something you should be advocating for or defending. It is a medical problem that needs to be corrected. Uh, and there are people who died because of that body positivity bullshit. Um, but
Yeah.
so why would someone support that? Well, I mean, it deals with their competition in a fairly pragmatic and final way.
Yeah, through a quadruple bypass.
Well, I mean, if they die, they can't really compete with you.
No, that's what I'm saying. Through a heart attack. Yeah.
Oh yeah, fair enough.
It is easy to say that women are the issue and we should just go back on feminism. And it is easy to say that men are the problem and we just need to get rid of toxic masculinity.
I mean, it's very obviously not a one size problem. I think it's more of a spiritual problem than it is really a political problem. Uh, it really has to do with people putting their ideas first instead of centering reality as is as like the thing to inform them. I genuinely think a lot of our modern problems are just summarizable by that. We love our ideas more than we actually love reality.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah.
But if we want to approach the truth, which is a requirement of finding a solution, we must be willing to recognize that women are the problem and the solution, and that men are the problem and the solution. And if we want a different trajectory for our boys and men, we have to be willing to look outside of the mainstream cultural narrative to look at this problem differently. Because discounting the suffering of boys and men in the
I just realized that this is the ideological equivalent of not touching grass.
Yeah.
The inability to
I mean,
center, the inability to allow someone else's like viewpoint to actually play out in your head without completely just like destroying yourself is the intellectual equivalent of someone who hasn't gone outside and touched grass. It is simply just they have not actually like used their cognitive function to the extent where they can actually entertain an idea they don't believe in and just follow it to where it leads.
wait, doesn't that sound a lot like solipsism?
Well, I mean, it's not solipsism
That's
per
my.
se, but I get what you're saying. It's like a sort of epistemological solipsism.
It's a very, very much a proxy war at this point. Yes.
Yeah,
name of social
I,
justice is not.
you were saying?
oh, I was gonna say. I think I also find it interesting. Like, it's always toxic masculinity, but I guess it's implied that toxic femininity is always there with feminism. But we just don't get to say it out loud because it's implied. Just-
Oh no, because the thing is it depends on the feminist viewpoint actually. But there are schools of feminism that believe that since it is the woman's choice that is central, then toxic femininity is by definition a contradiction in terms.
I'm aware. I'm just saying. We
Oh,
both know it exists.
I
The
mean, obvious.
cattiness.
Oh, okay. You're okay. You were being a shitter, but actually truthful. Okay, yeah, fair enough. Yeah,
Yes.
fair. Please, I need that hat. Please be patient. I have autism.
Here, I'll give you mine. It's the Ren and Stimpy hat.
Oh God, keep it.
Not, in fact, socially just. And we already know that the comments are going to be full of people calling me a pick me, so I'm going to capitalize.
I don't understand why the pick me thing is such a bad thing either. Like, if you have a husband, your answer to being, or a boyfriend, your answer to being called a pick me was, yeah, I was picked. When are you gonna get picked?
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, like I don't understand where that phrasing just seems weird. Like, isn't that the goal? Is to get picked and have a healthy life and mate,
Well,
have lots of children?
I mean, yes, but also again, women have that need for like have a different kind of social need than men do. So I was being a little bit hyperbolic. I actually do know where it comes from because
Well, I don't
w-
because I'm retarded.
women don't just want a particular like a singular partner. They do want a singular partner, but they also want a extended web of connections because while in the early days of man, so we're talking the human beings have been around for almost 2 million years and we've only really had civilization for the last 5 million years. So you can do the math on that. But for the majority of that time before 5,000 years ago when civilization really started, um not everyone would do hunter gatherer shit unless you were like a Neanderthal, in which case everyone in the goddamn family was involved for some reason. Um, but in the successful tribes, which mostly came from like Africa, uh, the women would do the foraging and then the men would do the hunting, and they would both have to cooperate. But if you were the one who felled the prey and got everyone food, like obviously that would be the way that you would be, propped up that particular time. It's like, yes, the one who actually, the actual literal bring home the bacon, right? Um,
Yeah.
but the thing is like the women back home having to deal with the children, uh, they may not necessarily have the same concerns because, for example, you can have a child and then be pregnant as well, and then you need help to manage the fact that you already have a child that's probably walking around and running around. So then having a strong network of female relationships is actually quite useful. So there's an evolutionary drive for women to have relationships in a different way than men do. And in many respects, it's a bit of a stronger compulsion towards that social aspect than it is in men for that exact reason. Because men are fine being able to excel, you know, individually. Because even in a hunting situation, that's basically how it works. You know, one person may be able to get that spear in the mammoth's eye, you know, and guarantee them lunch. But everyone in the tribe with the women kind of have to work together. So there is that whole social anxiety in women for that particular reason. It really does just boil down to how did we live in tribes thousands of years ago? You alive?
No, I'm clearly dead.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Capitalize on that now by saying that you should pick me by liking and subscribing to my channel. Thank you very much for.
See, like right there. It's like, if you're gonna call me pick me anyway, you should pick me. Fucking brilliant. You take
Yeah.
away the power of the words. Although, to be fair, a lot of the women who use the term pick me as an insult are so narcissistic that they'll just blow off the fact that you're, not being insulted by it. And then they'll be like, they'll try to come up with some kind of conspiratorial thinking about how you actually are offended just to save their ego.
For your time, and I will talk to you later. Oh my goodness, that video took me 10 years. I am so sorry that I've been MIA. I have had to learn so much. I've been studying this like all day, every day. Now that I have a really good understanding of what's going on and I'm a little bit more comfortable filming, I feel really excited about where things are going because this is really important. And it scares me that people don't realize what I said in the video. Like, we can't have a healthy and productive society without healthy and productive men. And the fact that we dehumanize men by just ignoring all of their suffering is just, it's so bad. And it's so much worse than I thought. Like, I'm really excited to share everything with you guys, but it is intense. We just had our first snowfall, so he's been out in the snow, so he's kind of wet and tired. Yeah. Anyway, I appreciate you, and I hope that I will see you soon.
All right, so what did you think of that video?
Yes.
Fair enough. I think
Not.
I mean, to be
But
perfectly honest, I think we satisfied the critique of it's not the same watching it on its own versus watching it in the commentary. We interrupted the video way too fucking much, and I think we added a substantial portion of commentary that would never have been in the video in the first place.
yeah, like the thing is too is like especially given like our differences in educational background, me being absolutely dumb as a rock versus you actually having been doing this for the past
6 months.
12 years. It's like it's like brother. Sometimes I just feel so tiny brain. Like, what am I supposed to say? This, at least to me, I guess being autistic, some of this seems like common sense. Like the issues that arise from such a Marxist and Gnostic rooted mentality. But then I remember, oh yeah, this isn't common knowledge. So
I mean,
help. Well,
to
how
be
do
fair, to be fair, there's two kinds of responses from autistic people regarding all this nonsense. Autismo, autism literally means inward turning. So some autistic people are more susceptible to propaganda, again, because it plays on the ideas in their head, whereas other people who have autism are actually less susceptible to propaganda because, again, when you tell someone that their sense experiences are fake and gay, their first thing is to be like, "Well, what the hell is my other option?"
like
Like,
it doesn't seem to make
but the only reason I even have you telling me my senses are fake and gay is because I experience you through my senses. So wouldn't I have to believe my
it's like
senses?
Yeah, I was like, wait, that doesn't sound very empirical of you.
Right? uh, all right, man. I think that'll be it for today. I think that was a pretty good first stream.
Yeah. Oh, pardon me. Whew. Uh, that was interesting to say the least. Like seeing someone say, "Yeah, I was completely fucking wrong."
Yeah, I want to do more
It's like,
political commentary, to be perfectly honest. But the problem with it is, like, I need something to actually riff off of, and I don't necessarily want to read articles all day. I don't have the charisma of Kirsche yet, but I also don't want to just do like reaction videos. So it's like, okay, but having a second person on screen, on stream, actually helps me have an actual conversation instead of just talking to
I
the
was gonna
board.
say that's. I was gonna say that's the biggest thing I think is like dual commentary for some of this stuff seems to be what you and I prefer. Same with like when I did actual FG or game commentaries. Like, you kind of need two people to bounce back and forth usually.
I mean, to be fair,
Like,
yeah, to be fair, Leaflet and Kirsche also back and forth with their chat. And the chat usually has some decent insight to give, or can be so cartoonishly wrong at times that Kirsche and Leaflet gets a clown on them. Those are also pretty
I
funny.
was gonna say that's yeah, I was gonna say that's the thing too, is you have to have an audience for that. So it's like
Yeah, but
you
all
can't
good
have an
things in
audience
time.
without charisma,
Yeah,
but it's hard to have charisma with the audience if you don't have an audience.
yeah, fair enough. But
Truly, the duality of man.
but it's all just a skill. It's all just things that you have to build up over time.
Yeah, skill issue. Fair enough.
All right, so I don't know if y'all are still here, but if you're still here in the chat, y'all have a lovely day. I'm ending stream.
GG's no re.
Oh God, is that how you're gonna end these?
No, I don't call me out like that, asshole.
You know I'm a shitter.
Oy vey.